Hey guys, tonight we're not sailing with pirates. No creaking ships. No rum-soaked chaos. No sunburnt sailors yelling at seagulls because they started it. Instead, we're marching somewhere colder. Much colder. Somewhere even the bravest pirates would take one look at and say, yeah, no thanks. Tonight, we're stepping into the brutal winter world of the Roman legionary. Not the glamorous Hollywood version. Not the heroic, shiny armor, slow-motion stabbing version. And definitely not the Julius Caesar speeches dramatically with perfect hair version. I mean the real life. The freezing mud, the endless snow, the numb fingers, the wheezing campfires, and the kind of cold that makes you reconsider all your life choices, including joining the army in the first place. But before we march into the icy frontiers of Gaul, go ahead and like the video and subscribe. But only if this kind of quiet, cozy, mildly miserable bedtime history actually helps you relax. If not, that's totally fine. Even Roman legionaries didn't agree on everything, especially not when it came to whose turn it was to clean the latrine trench. Leave a comment telling me where you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. It's always 2 a.m. somewhere, and if you're here, there's a good chance you're trying to fall asleep to the comforting realization that at least you don't have to stand guard in a blizzard wearing nothing but wool, leather, duty, and shaky morale. Now dim those lights. Switch on a fan for that soft white noise breeze. Get comfortable, and maybe tuck your feet under a blanket. Not because of rats this time, but because an imaginary Roman officer might appear to inspect your sleeping posture. Unlikely. But Roman discipline was intense. Let's pause for a moment. Have you ever wondered what soldier life actually felt like far from Rome? Where the streets weren't marble, but frozen mud. Where instead of warm baths, you washed your face with snow because the river was frozen solid. What did it feel like to wake up with armor so cold it practically bit you back? To march through sleet with a pack heavier than your regrets. To stand on a snowy ridge at dawn, staring into a white horizon where enemies might be hiding, or might have sensibly stayed indoors. What did it feel like to share a cramped tent with men who hadn't bathed since last summer? To eat barley porridge so depressing it should have been classified as emotional warfare. To hold the line when the wind hit hard enough to make your soul shiver. Tonight, we're drifting into that world. Not to feel fear, not to glorify hardship, but to experience it softly. Like snow falling on a quiet camp. Like embers glowing beneath a heavy cloak. Like the slow breath of a soldier who knows he must endure the cold because the empire is counting on him. So take a slow breath in. Let the noise of your day fade. And imagine the frost, the firelight, the discipline, the silence. A world where survival wasn't optional, but expected. Settle in. Close your eyes if you haven't already, and let the story begin. Chapter 1. The Centurion and the Snow that Never Ended. And now, as your breath softens and the world around you fades into something quiet and distant, let's drift gently into a winter older than memory. A winter carved not just into the land, but into the bones of the men who had no choice but to stand against it. Picture this. a lone Roman centurion stands on a wind-scoured ridge in the far northern reaches of Gaul. Not the Rome of marble, wine, warmth, and senators arguing over olives, but the Rome of frozen mud, sleepless nights, and an empire stretched so thin that even its bravest soldiers began to look like ghosts wandering through snow. He wears a panula, a heavy hooded wool cloak dyed the dark muted red of dried blood, the kind of garment meant not for pride, but for survival. Its fabric hangs stiff with frost, edges crusted white where the snow has melted and refrozen again and again. The wind slashes across the open land, carrying with it pellets of ice so sharp they sting any exposed skin like tiny ancient arrows. The centurion's breath billows from beneath the hood, each exhale a pale cloud that vanishes instantly into the endless cold. Before him stretches a landscape that feels more like the end of the world than a province of the empire. The trees stand leafless and black, their branches twisted like the fingers of drowned giants. The ground is a patchwork of frozen dirt, shallow drifts of snow, and old footprints half filled by last night's storm. The sky is a slab of gray stone, unmoving, unbroken, unkind. Here, winter does not visit, it rules. The centurion shifts his weight, boots cracking through the brittle crust of snow. The leather beneath is stiff, mended so many times that the stitches look like scars. His armor lies hidden beneath the cloak, cold enough that each movement sends a dull ache across his ribs. But a Roman centurion does not complain, at least not out loud. Behind him, the blurry outline of a small winter camp presses against the pale horizon. Tents sag beneath the snow, fires sputter weakly in the wind, and young recruits huddle together like livestock for warmth. He hears their coughing even from here, a harsh, wet sound that promises the early arrival of fever. The northern frontier was never designed for comfort. It was designed for endurance. For Rome, this desolate land is a line that must be held. For the centurion, it is a burden carved into duty. He scans the white expanse for movement, for the flicker of a torch, the shift of a shadow, the shape of an enemy brave enough, or foolish enough, to strike in weather that barely allows breath. But all he sees is snow. Wide, empty, merciless snow. He pulls the panula tighter around him, but the cold still threads its fingers through every gap in the fabric, finding the seams in his resolve. He has marched from the warm stones of Italy to this frozen exile, and yet this is not a punishment. It is his oath. A centurion stands so others may sleep. A centurion watches when others rest. A centurion endures so the empire may breathe. In the stillness of this winter ruin, with the world frozen around him and his men shivering behind him, he plants his feet firmly in the snow, as if daring the land itself to move him. And for a moment, in the quiet between the winds, you can feel it, the weight of duty, the cost of empire, the lonely courage of a man standing where no warmth exists except the fire he he keeps alive inside himself. Tonight, we remember him, the centurion in the snowfall, the sentinel of winter, the lone figure holding the line in a world made of ice. Chapter 2: The Outer Realm of Rome and Comfy Couch Dilemmas. Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Tonight, we dive into something colder than your ex's heart, the icy existence of a Roman legionary in winter. Picture this: you wake up not in your cozy bed, but wrapped in something that smells of sheep and sweat, to really kick things off with a bang. Before we plunge into the frozen tundra of Gaul, I kindly invite you to like, subscribe, and comment if you find any of this mildly interesting, of course. If you don't, well, that's perfectly fine. Now, imagine dimming the lights, cranking up that fan for optimal chill vibes, and snuggling into your blankets like a burrito of self-comfort. But here's the kicker. Have you ever wondered what it would be like to be a Roman legionary, reporting for duty while your toes are basically popsicles? Or maybe you can relate to the overwhelming urge to kick that bitter wind swirling around. Perhaps you've pondered how they succeeded in staying awake through freezing nights, despite their armor clinking like a bell choir at a funeral. And let's not forget, did they have a hot bod but chilly knob skincare routine happening under all those layers? Congratulations, you've just woken up in 40 AD, seemingly a world away from your very well-heated home, and you've got one goal: survive the merciless winter as a gleaming example of Roman brawn. Spoiler alert, it's not that glamorous. Let's talk about the scenery. The winds whip through the snowy expanse as our lone Roman centurion, wrapped in his thick, dark woolen painula cloak, stands against a backdrop that would whisper sweet nothings to the concept of solitude. You can see your breath hanging in the air like uninvited guests that just won't leave. The earth is coated in an unforgiving layer of snow that crunches beneath your sandals, which, by the way, are not exactly designed for icy terrain. It's like trying to do yoga on a slip and slide while wearing roller skates. You look around and wonder if the locals got together and decided one day, let's make this place as inhospitable as possible. The trees stand bare, branches reaching out like skeletal fingers grasping for warmth. Though, let's be honest, they're probably just trying to signal the nearest tavern for a hot drink. The air smells like frost and impending doom, reminding you that any cozy sweater you might think you have isn't going to cut it. Around you, legionaries huddle together, no doubt swapping stories that have far too much bravado and not nearly enough warmth. Oh, you think that was a tough march? Try doing it without properly thought-out feet. Is that a legionary or a popsicle stand? It's hard to tell. You remember your last winter coat. It was plush, luxurious, perhaps even faux furry. But here, you're bundled closer to a woolen potato sack than anything resembling a high-fashion item. Every layer you wear feels like you're channeling your inner T-Rex, arms tight, mobility restricted. You can already envision the fashion magazine cover. Tyrannosaurus Centurion, the look of winter, 40 AD. With the bitter cold gnawing at your bones, you begin your inspection of the barracks. Notice how the soldiers rely on their tight-knit camaraderie. It's not so much a house as it is a sardine can with aspirations of being a home. Sure, the roof is made of straw and held down more by wishes and hope than anything else, but they sure make it work. Most would look at it and think, looks great, sure beats a tent, Unless it snows, then it's back to the outdoor life, sans the luxury. Inside, the air is thick, primarily with the smell of, well, let's say unwashed bodies and burnt stew. It's as though 3 days' worth of food ingredients got together and threw a potluck dinner for the indecisive stomach. On the bright side, though, at least the smell might distract from the freezing drafts hissing through the gaps in the walls. Imagine trying to have a warm meal of gruel while holding conversation, except that your tongue is frozen, stuck to the spoon. Who needs ice cream when your dinner is a delightful version of temperature play? Every spoonful you take is a combative act against your taste buds, whispering, "You can do this," only to be countered by your inner voice, "Why didn't we just stay home?" And there it is. Randomly, a gust of wind sweeps through, causing you to fumble with your cloak and send your food flying across the room like a catapult. Congratulations! You just invented the war reenactment of dinner catapulting, a new Roman sport. So, here you are, a lone figure among your comrades, dressed like a walking woolen statue, crammed into a chilly barrack with half-frozen soldiers trading the tales of frostbite injuries that could put trophy wounds to shame. They say laughter is the best medicine, but it seems in this winter wonderland it may be the only thing keeping you from losing all sanity. Deep breaths. Remember, you're a centurion, a pillar of Roman resilience. Just visualize your comrades and this entire comedy of excess wool as you try to cook a meal that's perhaps not just edible, but still one of the worst ideas ever. What a time to be alive, huh?
Chapter 3. The Frostbitten Armor. Truths and Icy Shenanigans. Let's talk about armor. You're a Roman legionary, and you've just awoken to the soul-crushing realization that you're supposed to brave the elements with several 100 pounds of armor strapped to your body. Perfect conditions for extreme discomfort. As you gear up, let's reflect on what this chunk of metal and leather actually represents. A loyalty to the Empire, a degree of protection, and most critically, the ability to appear dashing even while experiencing frostbite. You approach your trusty Lorica segmentata. An impressive name, right? It sounds fancy, but translates to that time-consuming contraption that seems to weigh more than a baby elephant. Imagine trying to pull this massive hurdle over your woolen tunic, while your fingers are as stiff as frozen sausages. Truly, this is the peak of Roman engineering. The design is remarkable. Let's not even get started on the intricate lacing meant to keep it all together. If only Roman engineers had also invented warm fingers to make securing it easier. You inspect your armor, which looks as though it has seen both battle and what's likely last week's stew. There are cracks, probably from the last battle, or perhaps too much enthusiasm during the last mandatory team-building exercise, affectionately known as "hold a shield in the snow and complain about it." This is where bonding happens in the most unromantic way, marking the sacred transition from solitary complaining into a reinforced brotherhood of frostbite. And the sound, oh, the clinking. Each piece rattles as you bend awkwardly. You become the human embodiment of a wind chime designed by an extremely unhappy blacksmith. You can practically hear the snickering of your fellow legionaries as they see you struggle. It's like that one time you tried to sneak into a yoga class and realized flexibility was not on the menu. No hard feelings, right? Next, you check your shield, your faithful companion in the bitter cold.
Its surface is marked by the history of your epic and not-so-epic battles. After all, who can resist a good story about how you bravely dodged the wrath of a fellow legionary, only to crash into a snowbank? The frost startles you as you run your hand across the icy surface. Not so much manly warrior vibes as it is, does my breath stop at this point? You can't help but wonder if modern-day equivalents exist. Like, would today's hiking gear offer any insights? Should you be searching for an armor certified in winter wonderland scenarios? The only real difference between you and those adventure vloggers on social media might just be a lack of snow-sensing upgrades, or perhaps the absence of a "not freezing yet" filter. Now fully suited up, you experience the delightful sensation of straps digging in while contemplating outdoor patrol. Your fate is sealed. The first step outside feels like an initiation into a frosty circus act. The air is biting, each breath a tiny scream of cold slapping you in the face. Your sandals, designed for combat, offer less grip than trying to walk on a tightrope coated in banana peels. Compounding your misery is the fact that everyone knows that one accidental slip would lead you into the comically tragic spectacle of a legionary face-planting into a snowdrift like some proud, pancake-shaped emblem of laughter for the rest of the month. You march forth, reminding yourself that this is a noble effort, something about honor and Rome's glory and whatever. But honestly, deep down it also feels like the universe's cruel joke on every soldier who forgot to check if the weather forecast announces a frosty misadventure. Around you, fellow legionaries chatter, their breaths forming artsy little clouds of vapor. They catch wind of your armor struggles as stories of ancient frigid heroics morph into grand tales. You think his armor cracked? My mother's soup cracked harder. Your spirit lifts, only to plummet as the harsh reality smacks you. Soup can't freeze like your soul on this patrol. And what about food? This is where your stomach grumbles louder than a disgruntled bear, disappointed by winter salad. You reminisce about warm bread and hearty stews, but quickly remember there won't be a hot meal in sight until your patrol ends. The camaraderie, you think, will have to suffice. For now, it's all about survival against the elements and a little creative improvisation when you feel like an icicle chasing down glory. As you stumble through the snow, trying to maintain your dignity, you can't help but chuckle. Who needs a warm vacation when you can experience the resting ice face of a Roman legionary? So there you stand, a noble Roman soldier braving the frost on ancient ground, replete with armor that clangs like a baby elephant learning to tap dance. You've got a mission, bringing warmth and valor to the empire, all while contemplating the absurdity of it all. Watching your friends trip and tumble into the snow is not just a moment, it's a survival strategy, a reminder that laughter might just be the secret weapon against icy despair. In the grand picture of history, you ponder if any of this will be remembered, or if the season of becoming a walking ice sculpture will be funnier by the time it ends. But one thing is for sure, if humor can convert a harsh winter into a shared laughter, you'd say that's a victory in any winter campaign, especially when you have a hot bowl of soup waiting at the end.
Chapter 4. Layers of wool,
steam, and the quest for warmth. Let's dive into the heart of winter. Picture this. You are standing in a frosty tent, smack in the middle of the Roman Empire, and it's freezing colder than a polar bear's breakfast smoothie. You glance around, and your fellow legionaries are hunched over, examining their own woolen accoutrements, looking oh so comfortable in their own version of frosty fashion week. The chilly air is sharper than a general's rebuke, and every exhale you make creates a puff of steam that could rival a dragon's breath. Now, let's be real. You're not just layering up for warmth. This is a tactical operation against the gripping cold. First, you grab your heavy, dark-colored sagum cloak, the pièce de résistance of Roman winter wear. It's like wrapping yourself in a cozy, oversized burrito, assuming that burrito smells faintly of sheep and old battlefield sweat, because, well, this isn't the dry cleaners, it's the military. You take a moment to appreciate the texture, thick, coarse wool against your skin, which feels a bit like a woolly hug from your weird uncle who insists on giving you sweaters for your birthday. Then you realize that the cloak's purpose is not just to keep you warm. It's also a formidable shield against judgment from comrades observing your layering struggle. As you wrap it around your shoulders, you feel like a slightly flustered superhero preparing for battle against the frozen tundra. Fear not, Empire, for I shall prevail against the icy winds of winter with the force of 1,000 woolen sheep. With your cloak draped over your tunic, you attempt your best dramatic flourish. But instead of a swashbuckling hero, you resemble an awkward penguin, flapping fabric as you try to secure it over your armor, which hugs your torso tighter than a clingy friend who just learned you were voted most popular in the tent. You tug at the coarse fibers, cursing the wool that seems to multiply in size with each hassled pull. Is it just you, or does your sagum seem to be auditioning for a role in a comedy about a soldier who can't keep his cloak in check? You step outside into the biting cold, and a gust of wind swoops in like an uninvited guest at a party you didn't want to throw. Every breath you take forms billowing clouds of vapor resembling miniature puffs of cotton candy, which, let's be honest, are far more delightful than the reality of your situation. You're dressed as if you're preparing for a fashion show in Antarctica. As you attempt to navigate the icy terrain in your sandals, the original flip-flops of ancient Rome, you question your life choices. Each step is a cautious dance, more of a stiff shuffle, really, trying to avoid becoming the punchline in tomorrow's "Did you see that legionary eat snow?" everyone's favorite war story. You might be marching in formation, but you're also playing an unforgettable game of "How many ways can I slip and slide?" Around you, your fellow soldiers are not just chatting. They're sharing war stories, embellished more than that one overly dramatic tale of a lion slain by a single spear. Spoiler, the lion escaped, but the spear didn't get the memo. They laugh about encounters with snowdrifts that turned into surprise enemies during midnight patrols. Last week, I tripped over a particularly menacing-looking snowbank, one says, chuckling between breaths that form puffs in the freezing air. I swear it growled at me. You can't help but grin, bonding through shared tales of embarrassment, plus frostbite and imminent death, but let's focus on the first one. You realize you're not just struggling against the elements. You're participating in a group therapy session under the guise of military might. How's that for a survival tactic, you think? Now, about food. Ah, yes, the motivational highlight of your frosty patrol. The prospect of a warm meal. You remember the warm bread and hearty stew that now feel like historical legends, placed upon a pedestal that screams unreachable. When was the last time you tasted something that didn't hail from your last 6-hour foraging mission? Is there a light at the end of this icicle-shaped tunnel? You look to your comrades who, despite facing the same frosty frustrations, swing their shields with a sense of camaraderie that could warm a heart encased in frost. Ah, the irony. Here you are, battling the cold with a snack of questionable origins folded into your tunic, while structuring your laughter as the best armor for the spirit. And just when you think the endless winter of your discontent might snuff out your spirit, it occurs to you, maybe it's not that bad. Maybe you wear your woolen armor like a battle badge, an emblem of your audacity against the chill and your knack for finding humor in extreme misfortune. Maybe the history books will remember you not just as a soldier, but as the guy who turned a bitter cold winter into an epic comedy of errors. So here you stand, layers upon layers of wool, steam rising from your breath, and a heart warmed by laughter shared amongst those who suffer together. In the grand era of the Roman Empire, while legends may fall, you'll be remembered, if only for the absurdity of being a walking snowman in winter armor. Isn't that what history is really about? Chapter 5. March of the Crunchy Caligae. Imagine, if you will, a pristine blanket of snow stretches out before you like that fancy duvet you promised yourself you'd buy. But instead, it's frosty, bitter, and potentially the birthplace of your next embarrassing moment. There you are, standing at the edge of a military road, the biting cold gnawing at your cheeks like a puppy who's confused about whether it's snuggly playtime or a hero's epic adventure. And to top it off, you're abandoning all hopes of chic Roman sandals. Oh no, my friend, you're rocking Caligae boots, the original thick-soled footwear that looks like something your uncle would wear to the family barbecue, except with iron hobnails to remind you that you're not just a fashion disaster, you're a soldier. With each step, the snow beneath your feet crunches audibly, a sound reminiscent of a dozen serious decisions being crushed under the weight of one irrepressible winter. As you stomp through the whiteness, you can't help but chuckle hilariously at the thought that you're playing a one-man symphony to announce your presence. Every sound, crunch, 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 echoes like an overly enthusiastic drum roll heralding, "Here comes the mildly frostbitten legionary." But let's take a minute to appreciate the artistry of the Caligae. It's like someone took a leather glove, unceremoniously churned it in a blender with a pair of sandals, and called it a day. Seriously, they're tougher than your high school gym teacher on a bad day, and yet just as likely to give you blisters that would make even Roman gods sigh in sympathy. Each boot, sturdily fashioned to withstand enemy arrows and rogue goat attacks, but still, They leave the wearer questioning their life choices with every icy step. Picture it now. You're navigating the swirling snow like a clunky broadcaster wading through slushy mush. Only instead of an award ceremony, you're desperately trying not to become the laughingstock of your entire legion. As snowflakes flutter down from the heavens like mini champagne bubbles, your Caligay lead the way like a couple of misfit ducklings, stumbling to follow their rowdy leader, you. Every crunch of snow is like a minor explosion of embarrassment as the icy terrain behaves like a prankster during a game of charades. Each step feels like a gamble. Will I appear graceful today? Perhaps an embodiment of Roman valor. Or will I wind up flailing like a windmill at the mercy of the northwest wind? The struggle is real, and so is your misalignment between ambition and ability. Not to mention the fashion faux pas of the day. Oh yes, gentlemen, no woolen mittens to save your dignity here. What were you thinking? You are, after all, supposed to be a sturdy legionary capable of prancing through the snow with a resolute expression. Instead, you resemble a peasant engaging in an epic duel with frostbite, a condition that's less than ideal, unless
your career aspirations include becoming the first icicle elf in Roman history. There you are, moving forward with all the grace of a goat on skates, while your mind drifts to lighter topics, like the evening meal you hope awaits you. Odds are, it consists of whatever sketchy ingredients they could find, rumored to be edible. Perhaps an overused loaf of bread that has transformed through time into a rock-solid artifact, rivaling the Colosseum itself. Meanwhile, your friends, lacking any sense of self-preservation or indeed logic, debate the merits of surviving the depths of winter with a hearty bowl of questionable stew they've personally deemed cooked. One reports that it boasted a brothy flavor he was almost certain resembled something tasty, even if the prospect of genuine tastiness remained a mystery, as cryptic as finding a Roman bathhouse in a snowstorm. And speaking of confusion, rumor has it that some brave legionary during a particularly frigid nighttime revelry bravely proposed a toast to the benefits of warm wine, only to have the drink freeze mid-toast. The following week turned into one of embarrassment-fueled laughter amongst the ranks, as everyone discussed who shouted the loudest during that tragic moment of the half-frozen toast. To warm wine quickly morphed into, more like to frozen sadness. They would chuckle, rolling in laughter, while simultaneously wincing at the recollection of their less than warm realities. Your adventure through the battlefield of snow and ice may seem unimportant when stacked against the storied legacies of glory. And yet, it's these little moments, the comical difficulties, the foot-crunching snafus that gnaw at the edges of history and remind us how human the past really was. And yet, while the legions of Rome may come and go, the laughter you experienced, a slightly misled band of brothers continuing in levity and spirit, is a truth far mightier than any upward spiraling statue. So here stands our brave legion, tiptoeing through the lessons of survival, navigating the plains of bitter cold with hearts inviting warmth. Because in truth, isn't that what rallied the entire Roman Empire? After all,
Whether you're crunching through snow or navigating the hardships of modern life, laughter truly remains the strongest armor of all.
Chapter 6. The Hypocaust Ballet. Imagine, if you will, the solemn serenity of a Roman fort in winter. Snowflakes whisper down from the gray sky, floating gently through the air like tiny memories of summers long past. Despite this winter wonderland, there's something just as glorious happening beneath your feet that could end up being significantly more interesting than that last holiday party you attended. Welcome to the Hypocaust. No, it's not a fancy treatment for your stinky feet, although after trudging through Rome's winter wonderland in your caligae, you might be tempted to invent such a thing. The Hypocaust system is where Roman ingenuity meets the dubious task of keeping soldiers warm and cozy while they enjoy those hearty bowls of questionable stew we've discussed. And I assure you, the Romans were very serious about their warmth, especially when it was below freezing and they were contemplating whether a cobbled floor or a day in the gladiatorial arena sounded better. So picture this: a chamber beneath your feet, intricately designed with terracotta flues and stunning craftsmanship that would make Michelangelo wonder why he was wasting his time painting ceilings. This isn't a basement for the faint of heart or someone who's allergic to heat. Nuh-uh. Here, the warm air from a central furnace circulates through these chambers and pipes like an elegant dance of warm, toasty air. Yes, air ballet is indeed the phrase that will adorn the upcoming historical theater production. But let's pause for a moment. Who was tasked with keeping this whole operation running smoothly? Think of a legionary desperate to stay warm. Duty calls, but honestly, sweat and snow don't mix very well. As each man waddled around in his thick wool tunic, can you just imagine the sheer intensity of trying to figure out if that was the smell of smoke from the Hypocaust or last week's unsupervised sous vide lamb? Decisions were made, friendships temporarily severed, and air fresheners were non-existent. And there you stand, snugly tucked within these barracks of warmth, and hearing your comrades bicker over the effectiveness of the Hypocaust system versus the merits of strategically huddling around an unshared bowl of heating stew. Ah, the classic debate over historical methods of warmth. Because, of course, nothing says classic bonding experience like heated air and no access to Febreze. As you offload your frozen boots and wiggle your toes in relief, your senses are assaulted with the faint smell of sizzling oils from the hearth, mixed with a whiff of something that was once a vegetable. You close your eyes and immerse yourself in the atmosphere, envisioning how this fort has endured years of chill and chaos. Remember, these were soldiers who would chain bark at the slightest sign of chilly toes. Reflecting on the ingenuity of the hypocaust, it's hard not to envision a legionary, perhaps named Marcus, wading through knee-deep snow on another mundane morning, heat seeping into his thoughts like those splendid sausages they served at the tavern, if that tavern actually existed within a 10-mile radius in this I-can't-feel-my-toes weather. You might wonder, how did they figure out this whole ingenious heating setup anyway? Picture a group of enterprising Roman engineers huddled around a fire in a cave and shouting over the howling winds. What if we tried to make hot air flow up from below? Someone must have wanted to ensure that when they fell asleep amidst looming frostbite and questionable stew, there would actually be warmth waiting for them, in both the literal and philosophical sense. And we can't forget the engineering blunders. The time's early designs had the entire fort smelling like burnt hair, or heated debates on whether the air pipes needed to be wider or narrower. Plus, there is the horror of beginner's mistakes, when a new legionary is tasked with cleaning the flues. Hey guys, did I accidentally create the first smokehouse instead? Because I present to you smoky stew. Yet, if there's one thing the legionary knew, it was survival. And whether they were having nightmares about their next battle, or just remembering that last winter's frosty mishap with their Caligay, there was something continuously comforting about a new day, a warm hypocaust, and a bizarre ode to Roman resilience. As the snow falls softly upon the fort, you can't help but smile at the delightful absurdity of history, a reminder of how laughter always remains the mighty armor against error and embarrassment. Indeed, in reflecting upon the life of a Roman soldier during winter, the hypocaust becomes more than just a heating system. It's a cozy time capsule of warmth, camaraderie, and the perfectly understandable need to avoid frostbite at all costs. And, dear listener, if we take one lesson home tonight, it's simply this. When life gets chilly, sometimes the best thing to do is huddle together and let the heated air flow freely, be it from below or from a comfortable space of warm laughter. So, there you have it. The next time you feel the chill cutting through those warm layers, remember, you could be standing on a hypocaust. Well, maybe not an ancient Roman one, unless you've flown a bit back in time. Either way, cozy up in those imaginings, friends. After all, there's nothing quite like warmth to stave off the cold of winter, or the absurdity of history, or both.
Chapter 7. The Ember Embrace of Legionary Life. Hey guys, welcome back to yet another episode of mildly interesting history for sleep. Tonight, we embark on a journey colder than a polar bear's vacation to Antarctica. Yes, hold on to your blankets. It's wintertime, but not just any winter. It's the bracing chill of a Roman marching camp in the 1st century AD. Whether you're wrapped in a fleece blanket or a duvet that's seen better days, it's time to cozy up and immerse yourself in the absurd realities faced by our Roman friends. Can you even imagine having to report for duty while clinging to life, much like that last slice of cake at a party, against the bitter winds? But first things first, if you enjoy what you're about to hear, and we sincerely hope you do, please like, subscribe, and drop those comments down below. Only if you're genuinely feeling it, of course. No pressure. We all know the true treasures lie in the very whims of the heart. Now, let's set the scene. Imagine, if you will, you've just woken up in a frosty Roman fort. your body entwined in a blanket made of wool that smells like it has been through a battle with a goat. And, speaking of goats, ever questioned whether they'd make better company on a winter night than that snoring legionary next to you? How many times can one man complain about the tragedy of clogs on frozen mud without it driving you slightly insane? Let's wander over to the makeshift fireplace at the camp, that shallow earthwork straining to provide warmth. With glistening snowflakes pirouetting down from above, soldiers gather around flickering embers like moths to a not-so-warm flame. Seriously, it feels akin to that one friend who orders a lukewarm coffee and tries to convince everyone it's a unique brew. The air is punctuated with crackling sounds, but rather than resembling the gentle crackle of a comforting fire, it's more akin to a campfire with a temper, each pop sending little sparks flying, potentially igniting a very poorly guarded wool cloak. As you huddle closer, warmth radiates not only from the embers, but also from the questionable camaraderie found in shared misfortune. You can almost hear the unhappy grumbles as the legionaries attempt to indulge in a bowl of stew that smells suspiciously of something that shouldn't be defined by mere adjectives. A chorus of, "Is this supposed to taste like?" emerges amidst snickers, quick banter transforming the frozen air into a tornado of laughter and chilly, moist breath. If only there were a "Beware, scalding conversations" sign hovering above for the amusement of nearby passers-by. Because face it, that broth could either warm your soul or serve as effective punishment for betraying the local grocery store with your poor choices. Ah, but the mighty Roman legions were nothing if not resourceful, or at least they thought they were. They employed ingenious survival tactics, constantly debating over whether to huddle around the fire or brave the ice to fetch more provisions left over from last week's rations. Delightful, leftover surprise stew. On the one hand, warmth. On the other, the risk of slipping dramatically and becoming the subject of evening entertainment. Ever notice how modern life never really differs from the past? Today, you'd be wondering if that leftover Thai food from last week is worth the risk of fridge sock popping open. Spoiler alert, it rarely is. The campfire, glowing with just enough heat to fry frostbite, showcases various characters. The one overly dramatic soldier who launches into a soliloquy about his last encounter with a runaway sheep. The serious guy who inspects the wood like a seasoned sommelier choosing a fine wine. And the wild-haired enthusiast trying to convince everyone that the ghosts of legionary romances can be found among the smouldering ashes. Yes, it's a veritable circus of hardiness, draped in tunics sewn together with bellum humor. As the wind howls like a disgruntled banshee, the legionaries swap tales louder than the icy breeze, because nothing spells humor like someone recounting their perilous ice skating attempt to impress a lady and failing spectacularly, while struggling to keep their toes warm in less than ideal footwear. Yes, your feet are supposed to be toasty, right? Instead, they might feel more like frigid fish sticks trending towards a tragic frozen defeat. And remember, whether you prefer stirring warmth over the fire or freezing while trying to eat troublesome stew, the cute little trick to survive is to suck it up and embrace the hilarity of being miserable together. There might be no Uber Eats available, but at least you have the ancient version of takeout. Porridge that could navigate its way into the hearts and stomachs of even the heartiest gastronomes. Indeed, there's a peculiar kind of joy in the absurdity of battle, and a waggish notion of warmth in winter nights spent gathered around the flickering embers of an improvised fireplace in a Roman camp. Here's hoping your cozy blanket serves you better than that rusty old cloak. So, pull that extra wool over your shoulders. Embrace the camaraderie of shared struggles, be it in first century Rome or today. Because laughter, my friends, is the true heat of the heart. Stay tuned, as all your dreams, hopefully, remain within these cozier sides of history, keeping you comfortably tethered to our tale.
Chapter 8. Stones of Warmth in the Winter Chill. As you sink deeper into your pillows tonight, let's talk about the magnificent Roman invention of bed warmers. Yes, those delightful stones heated in a fire, ready to make your night feel less like an Arctic expedition and more like a cozy hug from a not-so-saucy bear. It sounds a bit like an ancient version of giving your bed a little warm-up stretch before you plop in, doesn't it? And if you're wondering whether those rocks had a reputation, let's just say that if they could talk, there'd probably be stories of legionaries pleading for mercy as they met their scalding fate. Picture this. It's winter in the 1st century AD, and you're among a bunch of Roman legionaries huddled in a tent that could kindly be described as breathable. Seriously, if walls were meant to keep warmth, these tents were more like a sieve for heat. Everything your woolen tunic avoided ended up biting at your toes instead. Standing by the fire in your trusty Roman sandals, your feet might feel like icy blocks of feta cheese, but that's a small price to pay for warmth. As the night deepens, the soldiers gather around the fire pit, where the flames seem to dance with mischief, licking at tiny pieces of wood like an eager puppy chasing its tail. Glistening river stones sit waiting in a basket, their dark, rugged surfaces begging to be heated. You'd think these hefty stones had been summoned from the earth by a wizard of warmth, but actually, their true magic is being plucked from the very rivers the legionaries passed on their way to yesterday's revelry. If revelry means desperately looking for any signs of life and realizing you've already consumed the last piece of cold bread. One soldier gingerly reaches for a stone, delicately wearing an expression as if he's about to propose to his long-lost love, only to have his hopes dashed the moment it slips from his grasp, plummeting back down with a thud that sends a bone-chilling echo through the camp. The other legionaries erupt in laughter, clapping him on the back as he feigns indignation. What's the matter? You transferred your charms to the stone? Taking it back to your tent for a cozy night, eh? As they heat the stones to a fiery glow, the legionaries chat about their plans for the evening. I'll wager this stone will make a better partner than that nagging woman in my life, a particularly loud chap declares, causing everyone else to nod in exaggerated agreement. Because really, when you're facing the biting cold of winter and in desperate need of warmth, who wouldn't prefer the reliable friendship of a stone to the dramatic responses of a loved one? It's the charitable thing to say, of course. Now, let's take a moment to ponder how exactly they use these heated stones in their quest for deep sleep amidst frostbite. Because nothing screams romance like plush bundles of cloth stuffed with rock. Legionaries carefully wrap each scorching stone in a cloth
that likely started its life as a less than ambitious tunic before it became the bedfellow for this peculiar method of comfort. In your mind's eye, imagine these glowing parcels alone, resting snugly in the folds of your bedding. If your life feels complicated now, picture having to deal with the thrill of a rock snuggling too close at night, cozy, but also existentially confusing. Like sleeping with a decidedly reluctant pet who might suddenly decide that your feet are particularly inviting towards midnight. The camp is full of the sounds of merriment, jolting mixed with those occasional nervous giggles as one soldier yelps when, during the process of retrieval, a stone grazes his ankle. "Ah! It's alive!" he squeals, his face twisting in a comical display of "Who knew stones could bite back?" The laughter lightens the frigid air, warming it just a tad more than the lame fire ahead. You can imagine the shenanigans as they pass the stones around, accidentally launching them like a game of Roman bocce, while trying to impress that one legionary who everyone knows could charm a cactus into blossoming. Once the stones are settled between layers of wool and hay, a makeshift bed fit for a general, you can almost feel the relief washing over them, like eating a warm bowl of porridge after days of cold leftovers. The warmth soaks through, chasing away the latch of winter like a runaway cat that realizes it's been left outside too long. But let's face it, there's about as much chance of a stone being a reliable bedmate as there is of a squirrel keeping your secrets, both prone to a rude awakening when the situation turns dire. Yet, in this cozy cacophony, amid the chuckles and cautious affection for their latest inanimate companions, the legionaries remind themselves of their imposing position in the vastness of the empire. They can't help but share tales of battles won and missed opportunities to avoid the cold altogether, often involving surprising antics from fellow soldiers, creating a kind of gathered warmth among them. Here, camaraderie battles even the frost, solidifying bonds like a well-heated rock, ready to conquer those long, frigid nights ahead. So, as you allow yourself to slip into slumber, draped comfortably beneath your own imaginary electric blanket of history, remember, sometimes a warm rock is all it takes to make life just a bit more bearable, despite the laughable absurdity of your ancient campfire stories. And as you find yourself floating between dreams, consider how, in the end, the true legacy of Roman ingenuity might always hinge on the simple brilliance of a hot stone, staving off the chill, making history just a tad more tolerable and quirky. And Chapter 9: The Cloaked Patrol Under a Starry Gaze. Hey guys, welcome back to another chilly episode that's about as warming as a lukewarm cup of cocoa left out for 2 hours. Tonight, we're diving deep into the frost-bitten footnotes of history, specifically focusing on the life of a Roman legionary who's braving the frigid winters in a wooden palisade. Yes, this is about as cozy as trying to cuddle a cactus. But who needs comfort when you can have cables, frostbite, and the sweet, sweet camaraderie of soldiers frozen together by sheer will? So grab your blankets, dim those lights, and perhaps find a fan to recreate that Procrustean air conditioning experience.
I mean, it's not like your modern-day struggles really compare to having your toes nibbled on by frost, right? Speaking of struggles, have you ever wondered what it's like standing guard under a blanket of stars, wearing nothing but a heavy cloak, battling insomnia while worrying about barbarian attacks? Or how your favorite cozy hoodie might fail to protect you from an entire night in the cold, just like the legionary down the road? And let's not even get started on the prospect of sleeping next to a friend who snores louder than the local Roman aqueduct's drainage system. Okay, so congratulations. You've just woken up in 1st century AD, where survival gear consists of wool cloaks and "I hope this works" vibes. Picture yourself enveloped in your cozy cloak, perched on a wooden palisade like a somewhat grumpy gargoyle. You've got a prime view of the frozen landscape, but it's not exactly the fire and ice concert you were hoping for. Not one bit. Instead, you're surrounded by a cacophony of crackling twigs, muffled whispers from fellow soldiers, and the distant howl of the wind. Imagine an orchestra of nature, only all the instruments are somehow broken and definitely out of tune. The stars twinkle above like 1,000 prickly Christmas lights, and oh, what a glamorous backdrop it makes. Especially during the chilling nights when you're on a lone patrol, shivering beneath your wool cloak. You keep your eyes peeled for movement in the forest, which mostly consists of shadows and the occasional squirrel that appears to be judging your life choices. You took that job in the Legion, huh? You can almost hear it chirping. Tough gig, buddy. As you patrol the wooden watchtower, the cold does an excellent job of infiltrating the cloak, slipping in like an unwelcome party guest. Your breath steams in the crisp night air almost as dramatically as you'd imagine doing karaoke in your living room after 3 too many glasses of wine. But instead of belting Wonderwall, you're just wondering how many layers of clothing it would take before you don't feel like a human icicle. The native patrolling gods are probably having a great time at your expense, living it up while you focus on not becoming a human popsicle. Seriously, your armor is about as effective against the cold as wearing a tinfoil hat against space radiation. All right. History scholars will argue that your segmented armor is designed for protection in a battle. But here's the thing. Not one of those scholars has ever stared into a howling winter cyclone, wishing for a warm chocolate cookie and a hot tub. Every so often, you hear the muffled sounds of the other legionaries gathered around a fire, sharing heated stones and tales of bygone battles. Things that once seemed like grand adventures, but now mostly just remind you how little anyone actually wants to step back into the cold. The guardians of warmth gather around the flames like moths drawn to a flickering light. Who can blame them? But for you, you're just out here patrolling, lost in thoughts about how much you miss that sweet, sweet indoor plumbing you won't experience until the 21st century. And let's not forget, these soldiers had to deal with the occasional wolf pack sniffing about, making a delicious late-night snack out of a less vigilant fellow legionary,
or sneakalicious unfortunate soul who forgot to fasten their cloak properly. You might think that rushing into action is easy when a pack of wolves shows up, but trust me, that's not quite how things went. What you're likely to see is a lot of frantic scrabbling, even more layers being tossed off, and a whole medley of wild hand signals that look like the world's worst charade game. Now imagine being so cold that even your cloak starts questioning its life choices. In a chilling twist of fate, you can almost hear it sigh. What was I thinking? I was supposed to bring warmth and comfort, not the mocking laughter of the cold. As the night stretches on, each creak of the wooden palisade resonates like a personal attack from the winter itself, a piercing reminder that while the Roman Empire might be formidable, winter antics have their own special layer of humor. In the eerie stillness, you ponder the motivation behind a soldier enduring this. Perhaps it's about that sense of belonging, or the dream of a warm meal at dawn. Yet, out here, amidst the biting cold, you can't help but wish for an invention that could warm not just your heart, but your very bones without the constant threat of frostbite. Just then, a sudden gust of wind blows, and the stars twinkle momentarily at you, like old friends calling you to join them for a warm drink. You shake your head, resisting the allure of floating off to consume whatever mythical beverages await. So as you stare into the starlit abyss, wrapped in your cloak, an accidental burrito of fabric, take a moment to ponder the absurdity of your existence. After all, in a world where humor and frost collide, perhaps it's all just a prelude to a cozy nightmares about faraway gold and glory, or merely an adventure to claim the warmest spot by the hearth tomorrow. And remember, nobody did raw winter like a Roman legionary.
It's life lessons like these that have warmed the hearts of historians, right up until they remember that some of them were just human salad ice sculptures hiding behind the palisade, wishing for a warmer fate in stories told around the fires for centuries to come. Chapter 10: The Timber Frame Triumph, Mess Hall Misadventures. Hey guys, welcome back to another exhilarating episode where we plunge headfirst into the winter depths of the Roman army, the stone-cold champs of frostbite and questionable culinary choices. Tonight, we cozy up to a narrative that's chillier than a polar bear in a snowstorm. Imagine a room full of legionaries huddled in their timber-framed mess hall, digging into a steaming bowl of porridge that makes stale bread seem like an exotic soufflé. Yes, prepare your taste buds to be underwhelmed. Now, grab your blankets and perhaps an oversized mug of, I don't know, hot cocoa or something that successfully masquerades as comfort food. Feel free to lighten the mood by dimming the lights or cranking your fan up to high. I mean, what better way to recreate the ambience of a drafty ancient Roman mess hall? Just remember, it's not your average Yelp review experience here. More like dining in the underwhelming section of a history buffet. And hey, if you really love this mellow adventure through the ice-cold corridors of time, don't forget to like, subscribe, and drop a comment, but only if you actually enjoy it. No pressure. Now, let's ponder. Have you ever tried to keep warm while surrounded by nothing but your comrades and a bowl of porridge that could allegedly double as wall paste? Ever thought about rivalries over who could huddle closest to the fire? Or worse, do you know what it's like to eat something that feels like it was prepared by a disinterested deity? What if you'd told a soldier back then about modern food delivery systems? Their jaws would drop faster than someone spotting an angry bear on patrol. Congratulations! You've just woken up in 1st century AD, a thrilling moment when taking a hot bath was considered an act of extreme bravery, and instead of, "How do I look?" the question of the day was, "How do I not freeze?" As you step inside the rough-hewn mess hall, which is as far from ambience as a lumberjack convention, you're greeted by the warm, fuzzy aroma of, well, not much, except maybe the faint scent of regret and unwashed socks. Picture it, a slanted roof, timber beams creaking slightly as if they're sharing secrets about the cold drafts that seep in like uninvited dinner guests. All around you, soldiers are gathered in clusters, faces shadowed and weary, as if the weight of the entire winter horizon were settled squarely upon their shoulders. They're hunched over bowls of wretched porridge, which has a texture best described as creamy in the way that wet cardboard is creamy. Each scoop requires a level of commitment that would make a modern-day vegan faint. The sounds enveloping you are an orchestra of slurps and sighs, punctuated by the occasional throat clearing that feels more like a gossip session than an actual dinner. What could possibly be so riveting about the grainy, lukewarm sludge? You watch as a comrade looks down at his bowl with the kind of despair usually reserved for someone whose favorite streaming service just announced it was pulling the only show they liked. As you take your own bowl of porridge, a faithful, rubbery companion about as appealing as a wet sock, you can't help but think about how comparable this is to modern-day microwave meals. You imagine legionaries whipping out their swords and declaring, "Let's battle the porridge," as they serve it up like it's a 5-star entree. Tonight's special, someone would banter with a wink, is slightly warm grain glop, followed by distant regret. What was even worse was the winter talk around the table, filled with tales of past glories, now tempered by the chilly aftertaste of wet wool. "Ah, remember the time we had that glorious feast?" a soldier hints with a dreamy gaze. Someone else, likely nursing frostbitten toes, retorts, "Do you remember what we ate? Because I cottoned on to the fact it was slush, resembling a distant cousin of the moldy hay outside." And let's not ignore the firewood situation. You look toward the flickering hearth, where a pile of damp logs awaits, like sad wooden sentinels, trying their best not to smolder too dramatically. The flames dance rather pathetically, casting shadows that resemble medieval horror films. It's the kind of ambience that could make even ghosts shiver in discomfort. Between mouthfuls of despair, soldiers exchange battle anecdotes more animated than you'd expect from soldiers eating food that feels like a collective punishment. "I swear I fought a barbarian last summer," one boasts, "and now that he's plotting to conquer the rest of the porridge in his bowl, you have to admire his tenacity." There's a bizarre camaraderie about sharing this form of intermingling misery. You can almost hear the collective consciousness singing, "When life gives you porridge, you just have to slurp up that life." The energy in this mess hall is weirdly comforting, like a group of siblings huddled together to endure a particularly grueling family reunion, where no one speaks about Aunt Edna's infamous fruitcake.
As laughter washes over the room, from somewhere in the back, possibly at your expense, a fleeting thought enters your mind. Perhaps the real bonding characteristic of these legionaries was their mutual understanding of enduring something horrendous together. In this misfortunate gathering over porridge slush, they're not just soldiers, but unwitting participants in the oldest human tradition of sharing a meal, one that takes endurance to the next level of absurdity. And while you may contemplate the historical significance of this culinary adventure, one universal truth shines through. Back then, and even today, nothing can outmatch the bonding experience of food, however unappetizing or soul-sucking it may be. In a world where you might just believe that porridge might also feature as an ancient Roman punishment, at least you're lucky to just be in one giant, lukewarm family. Chapter 11. Huddled Heroes, the cozy chaos of legionary life.
Hey guys, welcome back to our historical soft serve of mildly interesting history slathered in absurdity and sprinkled with a dash of hilarity. Tonight, we dive into a situation colder than your Aunt Margaret's frozen casserole. The winter life of a Roman legionary packed into a tent with 7 other men who couldn't tell you the last time they had a decent bath. Spoiler alert, it was probably in a swamp, and that swamp probably had crocodiles. So, as we embark on this icy journey where human warmth becomes a coveted treasure, let's ponder. Have you ever been so cold that you contemplated forging a friendship with the nearest radiator? Or huddled so closely with your friends that you started to feel like an overstuffed burrito? Perhaps you've tried sharing a single blanket with a snoring partner and ended up with a king-size war of tug-of-war. But consider, what if your only blanket was the man next to you? And by blanket, I mean the guy who put on a little too much garlic while enjoying his rations. Please hold on to that thought as we prepare to ship out, quite literally, to the chilly realm of 1st century AD. Congratulations! You've just woken up in the heart of a Roman winter, cloaked in the promise of frostbite and questionable life choices. You find yourself nestled within a dinky tent where flaps flap less like an entrance and more like a dramatic entrance to some outdoor frigid circus. It's cramped, it's cozy, and just barely breathable due to an aroma best described as aged sheep and last week's porridge. Ah, home sweet home. Let's dive into the scene. Picture this: 8 battle-hardened legionaries, all snugged in together like the strangest human bratwurst. Their breaths create little clouds of warmth that slowly rise and dissolve into the frigid air. And between them, the body heat melds into a force field that practically screams, "Do not disturb." Every morning, these soldiers wake up in a pile, bodies arranged with all the grace of discarded laundry. When one man stirs to life, it's less like waking up and more like rolling a gigantic snowball of humanity. Oops, sorry about your toes. you might hear, as a guy accidentally knees his buddy in the ribs while trying to reclaim the extra half-inch of warmth. And let me tell you, these sleep-deprived gladiators would leap out of that pile faster than a hot potato. But besides its chaotic charm, there's an interesting survival tactic happening here: the art of huddling. In any given tent, where wood smoke and body odor mingle sweetly, a legionary warms himself not with ignoble leisure, but by utilizing the thermal alliance with his tent mates. This is like curling up for a cozy Netflix binge, but with more fur and less Wi-Fi. Ironically, they're managing to defy the very nature of space and personal boundaries, which in modern terms translates to "no one is safe if you're on leg."
Duty. It's a chilling tableau when they take their nightly retreat. One soldier coughs, followed by a symphonic chain reaction of phlegmy hacks. "Welcome to our winter symphony," another quips, as if the music of their misery is one for the ages. You can almost hear the audience of emperors and generals clapping in the background, wondering when these brave souls will finally crack and start issuing morbid winter puns. The absurdity doesn't stop there. Imagine the tussle for the warm spot. Someone, inevitably, will snore like a wounded wild boar, and envious eyes will dart toward the man next to him, who looks suspiciously comfortable. It's less about being polite and more like starring in a live competition of who wants to hibernate with a legionary. Spoiler alert, it's always the guy who fell asleep with a bit too much wine and not enough personal space etiquette. Nights are long, and the body heat literacy is masterful. Ever tried to sleep wall to wall with a buddy while sharing secrets about the last time someone saw the sun? "Back in summer, boys, we were basically gods," they'll exclaim, raising their porridge bowls in a toast against the cold. Their dreams are filled with visions of warmth, sunlight, and definitely not the person next to them asking if they've ever preserved the faint scent of garlic from last week's rations. Pretty romantic, right? In many ways, this bizarre huddle brings out the best in their camaraderie. They share a blanket, albeit a wrinkled one, soaked in some unnamed liquid, which, let's be honest, is a feat of cyclic endurance only to be experienced in a junior high sleepover. Cries of "pass the warmth" echo in the tent, punctuated by sudden jabs to the ribs as one soldier jerks awake, bonking heads and reviving the age-old debate: who's worthy of the wall seat? And there you lie, an active participant in this rugged warmth, partaking in a shared human experience that bonds people through the harshest of winters. You may wake up cold and unshaven in a pile of comrades, but look around. These are your companions in misfortune, fellow warriors in the frigid trenches, who inspire in you the gleeful absurdity of when life sends snowflakes, we make porridge. With conversations melting into laughter and the midnight burrito roll of confusion, as history churns on in chilly waves, you find solace that while this life seemed as accessible as a Roman market, it truly harbored warmth as deep and real as the layers of woolen tunics and the peculiar friendship of 8 warriors
crammed into a drafty tent. And though it may have been an utterly freezing existence, you can't help but marvel at the heartwarming absurdity before you. A true testament that sometimes warmth isn't just found in blankets, but in the brothers you choose to bear the cold with.
Chapter 12. The Icy Embrace of a Legionary Life. Hey guys, welcome back to another voyage into the annals of mildly interesting history. Tonight, we're braving the cold, and I mean colder than a polar bear in a snowstorm. The brutal life of a Roman legionary in winter. That's right, folks. These guys traded their togas for armor and their hot Mediterranean weather for an icy patch of northern Europe that would have made even the most stoic penguin quiver. But before we march into the frosty trenches, let me ask you this. Have you ever tried to get warm while sharing body heat with a group of friends, but ended up feeling more like sardines in a tin than a cozy cuddle puddle? Or maybe you've huddled together for warmth, only to realize you've chosen the perfect potion of ripened cheese for your close quarters. Ah, the joys of friendship. By the way, if you enjoy this blend of absurdity and history, feel free to like, subscribe, and comment. But only if you truly like it, folks. No pressure. Now, dim those lights, grab a cozy blanket, and find a fan, because we're about to dive headfirst into a reality where frostbite is just another Tuesday. Congratulations! You've just woken up in a snow-blanketed Roman winter camp, snugly tucked away in a valley that looks like nature's own frozen stage set for a dramatic Roman opera. As your eyes flutter open, you find yourself in a snug little tent shared with 7 other legionaries who smell like they've lost a wrestling match with full barrels of pickled herring. Welcome to your home for the next few months. The tent might look like a blanket fort built by a committee of toddlers, but I assure you, this is a fortress of camaraderie dressed in woolen tunics and stale bread rations. Let's talk about bathing, shall we? Spoiler alert, it's non-existent. The legionaries bathed as often as modern-day cats go for a swim. So, brace yourself for the delightful bouquet of perspiration, and consider yourself lucky if you catch a whiff of the questionable stew bubbling over the fire. Smells rather like a dinner party gone terribly awry. It's early morning, and the aroma fills the air, swirling around like a bad perfume commercial gone rogue. You hear murmurs and the occasional exclamation of, "Hey, that's my foot," as the legionaries wrestle out of their layered sleeping bags. Mornings here are less about fresh coffee and more about waking up trapped in a tangle of limbs, all while hoping the guy next to you didn't have beans for dinner. When they finally manage to disentangle themselves, they emerge into the world like sleepy, confused bears. Each man is bundled in all the layers they own, which means they look less like soldiers and more like walking pomegranates. Need an image? Think of a moody fraternity party on ice. Let's take a moment and consider their breakfast options. No gourmet avocado toast here. Instead, envision a bowl of porridge so thick it would make glue seem runny. They've got no choice but to shove it down with a side of dubious sausage, which may or may not contain the mystery ingredients of whatever we had left. It's like playing a guessing game every time you eat, but instead of winning a prize, you just get a stomachache and a new flavor of regret. As they gather around the fire, which acts more like a tepid suggestion of warmth, their conversations bounce around like errant snowflakes. "Remember when we saw the sun?" one soldier jokes, and the others nod in somber agreement. How long has it been? A fortnight? A year? In these moments, you'd think they were reminiscing about a long-lost love, but it's really just about that one day in July when they felt warmth for a solid 2 hours. But let's not forget the comical chaos of their daily life. As the legionaries prepare for the day, they strategize like a group of chefs trying to make a soufflé in a wind tunnel. "All right, team, I call dibs on the left side of the tent. It's warmer." But as soon as someone sneezes, the tent erupts into an impromptu symphony of exaggerated coughs and groans. You'd think they were all auditioning for a winter-themed opera, and frankly, they're nailing it. And then, of course, there are the daily battles. No, not against enemy tribes, but the ongoing skirmish for warmth. The moment one of them finds a warm spot, it's all hands on deck, like a hyperactive game of musical chairs. One courageous soldier, particular to his coffee conquests, makes a mad dash for the spot nearest the fire, only to find it occupied by a snoring giant who's mysteriously gained the title of the human radiator. So, while the frigid winds whip through the snowy valley, life in the legionary camp rolls on with a bizarre sort of resilience-filled hilarity. Every cold snap turns into a reason for bonding. Every breath of frosty air becomes fodder for laughter. And every questionable meal is an opportunity to bond over a shared "what the heck is this" moment. Survival in the Legion is less about brutal battles and more about shared warmth and unfiltered friendship, wrapped in woolen layers and a whole lot of laughter. And as the cold grips the valley outside, one thing is certain. Amidst the chaos and frost, these legionaries find warmth in the absurdity of their winter lives together. Chapter 13. The Struggle of the Sarcina. Ah, the morning of a Roman winter, in a place colder than a snowman's frozen heart. As the dim light leaks through your tent, you find yourself enveloped in a pile of wool and confusion, every fold and wrinkle reminding you this was no ordinary day. Today, you have a delightful quest ahead of you, strapping on your sarcina. Now, picture this. An oversized backpack containing enough supplies to make the local grocery store weep in envy. Extra wool blankets, some dubious rations that could double as brick substitutes, and a few suspiciously squishy sausages that maybe spent too long in the wrong barrel. The sarcina is not just a bag, it's a tiny mobile fortress designed to carry everything you need until you remember the ancient Roman saying, "Why does it always feel heavier after breakfast?" As you groggily lift the pack, wincing under its weight, you're immediately reminded of the last time you overstuffed your suitcase for a weekend getaway. Except you actually need to hike with this behemoth. With every movement, the pack seems to laugh at you, as if it's in league with the frost clinging to your leggings. The farce of it. What kind of life is it where woolen trousers are as warm as a block of ice? Trying to wrap your arms around the sarcina, you inadvertently perform a clumsy pirouette, leading to an awkward loss of balance. It's like a Roman version of a dance-off, except nobody really wants to see you attempt the twirl of doom. With staggering dedication, you finally get the strap secured, only to find that you resemble a very confused tortoise playing dress-up as Hannibal's caravan. You may wonder, where's the breakfast, right? However, breakfast in a Roman winter camp feels more like an unsatisfying game of
will it blend than a meal. You've got your standbys. Porridge so dense that even a spoon starts to question its existence, and bread that's a little too cliff-like to consider munching. The sound of clattering breakfast gear echoes through the camp, but it sounds less like a culinary routine and more like that time you tried assembling IKEA furniture after a few too many cups of mulled wine. And let's not forget the delightful ambience of the camp around you, filled with the sounds of disgruntled grunts and the occasional shout of, "Get off my foot!" as you and your fellow legionaries grapple with the strains of the chilly morning. As you push your way to the meager fire ring, hoping to find a patch of warmth, you discover an unfortunate soul attempting to thaw his rations. Because who doesn't love the delicious aroma of semi-frozen sausage? What could possibly go wrong? Suddenly, you remember the last time you tried to warm up leftover pizza in a microwave, and that's about as close as you can relate to this dire scene. You eye other soldiers, all bundled in layers resembling mishandled puff pastries, as they try to cozy up by the fire. One soldier, now almost indistinguishable from a walking quilt, shuffles over, eyes glazed with hungry hope. "Do you think this will solidify before we start camping out on its icy exoskeleton?" he mumbles, gesturing at the pot that may have witnessed things no pot should ever see. Ah, camaraderie. Your fellow soldiers strive together through dawn's misery, much like people sharing a carriage during rush hour. Except instead of public transport signs, they have battle strategies involving flatulence to disperse cramped spaces. It's a delicate art of survival, one that teeters on the brink of absurdity with every light-hearted jab at a frozen breakfast. Now, lo and behold, after a protracted wrestling match with the Sarcina, endless stumbles out of your tent, and rigorous negotiation over the last scraps of stale bread, you're finally ready to venture out. Staggering out onto the frosty field, you're greeted by the sight of your colleagues struggling with the same burdens, quite literally, as they try to strap on their packs without a minor heart attack. You see one legionary who appears to be contemplating a new philosophy of life. Is it really worth lugging all of this around? Maybe we could just convince the enemy to bring us snacks, he muses, and the sentiment resonates in the soup-like air. Hell, why not? If you could just charm the neighboring tribes into a deal involving baked goods, you're pretty sure the glory of Rome would be safe. As you stumble and shuffle your way through mud and frost, one thing becomes startlingly clear. Nothing can prepare a Roman legionary for the battle against winter. The icy breeze whistles through the camp like a cruel conductor, orchestrating a symphony of mingled exclamations that rise from behind woolen masks. "Did you step on my boot? Why is my sausage sticking to the roof of my mouth?" Surviving this winter is less a matter of exceptional training and more about transforming collective misery into unabashed humor. You may not find a comfortable spot at the fire, but you'll find solace in comradeship built on shared agony and wildly off-key laughter. So, while the icy winds howl and frosty air wraps tightly around the camp, all you can do is manage a half-hearted smile, appreciating not just the absurdity of your situation, but the hearty resilience of the human spirit, even while bundled up like an ungainly fruit. And that, dear listener, is how you combat a Roman winter, one hilarious misstep at a time. Chapter 14. The Quest for Firewood. Hey guys, Get ready for a night more frigid than an unwanted text from your ex at 2 a.m. Tonight, we're diving into the icy realities faced by our Roman brethren as they navigate the frozen wilderness in search of firewood and, ideally, something to eat that doesn't resemble a frozen hockey puck. You're about to embark on an adventure that'll leave you feeling warmer inside than a freshly baked loaf of bread. Well, unless you've got bread dealing with the winter chill too, which is more likely than you'd think. Before we dive into this hilarious yet chilling saga, take a moment to dim the lights. Turn on that fan like you're an ancient Roman trying to surprise a winter breeze, and get comfy. Make sure your pillows are fluffed to the maximum, because tonight you'll need all the support you can get. Kind of like a Roman soldier would dream of a comfy mattress after trudging through snow. And by dream, I mean wish desperately. Now, picture this. What would you do in the dead of winter with no cozy Starbucks to run to? Would you wear 10 layers of clothing and stumble awkwardly across fields like a poorly constructed snowman? Great! Now, why are you still sitting there imagining? Can you honestly hold it together when the snow is up to your knees and you have to question each footstep like it's a bad debt collector? Think about it. Are you prepared to negotiate with frost like it's a very stubborn colleague? Will you find humor in near frostbite while dragging a heavy pack? And let's not even discuss how fresh your breath would be after gnawing on whatever rations you can find out there. Congratulations! You've just woken up in 1st century AD, somewhere much colder than your refrigerator's ice compartment. It's time to channel your inner Roman and venture into the wilderness as you and your fellow legionaries embark on a legendary, albeit absurd, quest for firewood. The day starts as gently as a sledgehammer to the face. It's cold enough that every breath forms little clouds of vapor. You emerge from your tent like a bear realizing it missed breakfast, squinting at the blinding white fluff surrounding you. As you brush off the frost, you realize your legionaries are also preparing to brave the unforgiving landscape. Dressed like fluffy marshmallows, they shuffle about, trying to locate their spears and each other in a snow-cloaked madness. You could make a movie called Frozen, the Legionary Chronicles, with the amount of struggle being displayed. The camp is a cacophony of muffled grunts and the sounds of heavy wool flapping in the wind, which, let's be honest, isn't doing anyone any favors in the warmth department. You stand there, surveying the scene, and can't help but wonder, have I ever faced off against 2 hungry squirrels competing for last week's stale bread? Because that feels quite relevant right about now. As your squad sets off on This grand hunt for firewood, an excursion, mind you, that sounds a little too much like a desperate scavenger hunt. Your hearts are more racing than a herd of deer on the run. The spears are lowered, and your footsteps crunch against the snow, echoing through the forest like an off-tune choir in a nunnery. Now, let's consider the task at hand. Finding firewood is not just a matter of grabbing whatever the shrubbery has to offer.
No, my friend, it's more like deciding which branch is worth the effort of wrestling it out of the snow-covered ground while sustaining the dignity of a gladiator. Not that anyone has that going for them today. You can almost hear the trees chuckle at your efforts. I mean, come on. Have you ever seen a tree that didn't look smug while you're struggling to navigate through its snowy domain? As you stumble through the frozen labyrinth, every little snap beneath your feet sends chills through your spine, and the only game you've found is dodging icy obstacles, much more challenging than any enemy you'd face. One fellow soldier, in his enthusiasm, miscalculates a leap over a small mound, and of course face plants spectacularly into the snow like he just lost his wrestling match against a very motivated snowdrift. "Not the best entrance to our wood-gathering party," you quip as he pulls himself from the snow, looking like a particularly distraught penguin. It's hard to believe that this is part of the curriculum in being a legionary. Honestly, you could teach a course on how not to win nature's favor. While you're searching, you finally locate a small pile of kindling, attempting to game the system by staying covered in the fluffy white stuff. It's like finding that one piece of chocolate buried deep in the back of your pantry, long forgotten but incredibly gratifying. What could possibly go wrong? As you gather up the sticks, thoughts of campfires dance in your mind. You envision warmth, roasting half-frozen rations, and maybe even a rendition of Kumbaya. You know, the ancient Roman version that involves grumbling about the cold and critiquing their sausages that are unfortunately similar to bricks. Yet the reality is that survival in this snow globe of despair requires finding some actual game. That's right, folks. On this chilly adventure, you're not just wood gatherers. You're suddenly transformed into amateur hunters. You could hear a whisper through the trees, "Be the wolf, not the sheep." And yet all you can think is, please manage to not scare off anything remotely edible. Each crack of a twig causes you to freeze, barely breathing, as you conjure up images of dinner that would make even the pickiest of eaters swoon, if only they could see how embarrassing the hunt truly is. Quite frankly, it's a lot of flailing limbs and awkward moments, like you're stuck in a very low-budget nature documentary. In your escapade for survival, you realize that the
Teeth of winter nip, sharper than a golden retriever at an ice sculpture contest, and your comrades share in the absurdity. Mutters about snacks being the true key to winning battles occasionally float through the group while braving the wilderness together. So there you are, legionaries equipped with spears, fluffier than ever, as you inch your way through the forest, frozen, bundled, and inexplicably ready to push the limits of human sheer absurdity. The quest continues, one clumsy step at a time, and together you fortify your spirit against the winter's icy embrace. Each snow-covered hug from your comrades becomes oddly comforting, while you both realize how ludicrous it is to be out here. Ultimately, let's be honest, the true camaraderie of the legions isn't just about defeating enemies. It's about battling nature, piecing together warmth, avoiding frostbite, and doing it all with a grimace mixed with laughter. And who knew that hilariously bad decisions could lead to something this genuinely uplifting? There's nothing quite like the frost-kissed absurdity of a Roman winter to remind you how to laugh when all else freezes. Chapter 15. The Centurion's Inspection. Hey guys, welcome back to the frozen wasteland, where the only thing colder than the air is the disciplinary tactics of a Roman centurion. Tonight, we're going to stroll through the frosty boots of a legionary as you stand in a line colder than a penguin in a snowstorm, waiting for an inspection that might send even a Spartan running back home. Trust me, winter in the Roman Empire brings its own unique brand of icy despair that's about as inviting as a Monday morning meeting. Before we plunge into this chilling saga, do us a solid. If you enjoy the ride, give us a thumbs up, subscribe, and drop a comment. Your thoughts mean more to us than half-frozen bread means to a starving soldier. Grab a blanket, and let's see how life would unfold if you were a Roman legionary enduring a winter that feels like it lost a bet to a snowdrift. So, picture this. How would you feel being lined up under the watchful eye of a centurion whose idea of fun is counting how many layers of wool you're sporting? Do you think he has a hidden career as a fashion critic, judging a sheep-themed runway? Can you imagine the horror of being told to inspect your comrades' cloaks to ensure they're not secretly made of llama wool? And think about it. If hygiene is vital, what's worse? Being called out for your unkempt beard, or being ridiculed for wearing your loincloth backward? Now, imagine the centurion's stern face as he inspects your frozen toes, deciding if they're fierce enough to be considered a good soldiers. Congratulations! You've just woken up in 1st century AD, where the chill isn't just from winter, it's the silent dread of the centurion's impending judgment. Let's dive into this icy inspection. You stand shoulder to shoulder with your fellow legionaries, each of you dressed like an overstuffed sausage in wool garments that might as well be mummified. The centurion approaches like a blizzard in a bad mood, a figure of authority that exudes more chill than a polar bear in a tuxedo. His armor gleams bright and shiny, like a bad idea you wish to return. "Line up," he barks, sounding like he's rehearsing for a role in a particularly harsh rendition of Frosty the Snowman. And as you shuffle to your feet, you can't help but feel a knee-deep instinct to bolt back to the warmth of your tent. Your leather sandals, practically frosted over, squeak against the ground, providing a soundtrack that's part neurotic hamster wheel, part theatrical farce. Welcome to Winter Camp, Roman Edition. The centurion circles like a hawk that accidentally wandered into a snow globe. He scans the ranks with eyes sharp enough to cut ice. This is your inspection. You'd better not have a single piece of snow stuck to your tunic, or by Jupiter himself, you'll face the wrath of legionary punishment. You can't help but feel sorry for your fellow soldiers, half of whom are trying not to sneeze
during this absurd display of sub-zero scrutiny.
"Show me your feet," he demands. Yes, this is truly happening. Suddenly, warmth from embarrassment sweeps over you as you consider the horrific realities of revealing your toes to an audience that likely hasn't bathed in weeks. "Do you want trench foot?" he continues, his voice booming like a winter storm. "Because that's how you get trench foot." And lo, standing there barefoot gives you a fantastical sense of vulnerability. You'd trade your last ounce of dignity for a pair of fuzzy socks right about now. Have these shoes ever seen a good scrub? He raises an eyebrow, and you contemplate your life choices as you desperately wish for a Roman equivalent of a foot spa. The irony compounds, frozen tundra and all, and here this guy is, testing your sturdiness while you can barely feel your extremities. Let's be realistic here. Hygiene among legionaries is no joking matter, especially when you face frostbite that makes your skin resemble an overcooked sausage. Fact: cleaner feet lead to happier soldiers, something the centurion has likely carved onto an ancient stone tablet. After all, who wants a legion full of dozen-footed, moody men complaining about foot fungus during a winter campaign? Spoiler alert, nobody. If you're in his good graces, don't let that swirl of frostbite fog your judgment. The centurion inspects each soldier with an intensity that could melt ice caps. If I discover one of you has gone unwashed in the past week, I'll assign you the most desolate duty, cleaning the latrines. His voice echoes through the cold air, embedding a sense of dread deeper than the snowdrifts. As you share awkward glances with comrades whose expressions are a mix of resignation and face-palming disbelief, you ponder the absurdity of it all. Could anyone survive this frigid disaster without a proper shower? And is the best form of hair gel really snow? Or is that just another story sharks tell among their peers? Pondering such things seems almost comical against the backdrop of the harsh Roman winter. After the rigorous inspection, a whole host of curious feelings floods the camp. On one hand, victory. You made it through without being made into a case study of what happens when proper clothing meets improper choices. On the other hand, nothing is more absurd than standing wrapped in layers, grinning like an idiot while on the verge of frostbite. But think about it. Do you feel a strange camaraderie with your fellow soldiers? Absolutely. All of you are freezing together, sharing the same bizarrely frosty fate, much like those terrible fitness classes everyone tries to survive. So here you are, half-heartedly high-fiving the guy next to you as you shake off the icy embarrassment and remember to laugh at how ludicrous this whole situation is. Winter in a Roman legion isn't just survival. It's a shared experience that freezes your toes while warming your heart. So if you ever feel cold and miserable, remember that once upon a time, dozens of Roman legionaries were dealing with the same frustrations, foot inspections, and laughter echoing through the snow. And as you hunker down for the night, snug in solitude, perhaps you'll find warmth in the knowledge that goofing off in frigid conditions is a time-honored tradition. Welcome to the enchanting world of layabouts in the depths of Roman wintry madness. You're never alone, even in the frosty grip of a centurion's watchful eye. Chapter 16. The Necessity of Foot Rubs. Hey guys, welcome back to the land of winter woes, where frostbite isn't just a concern, it's basically a regular Tuesday. Tonight, we're diving into a surprisingly intimate moment between comrades in the frigid embrace of the Roman army. Imagine a scene you thought only existed in your worst, sitting on the couch in your PJs for too long nightmares. Except here, it's all about foot massages to fend off frostbite. But before we step, or should I say shuffle, into this icy relaxation session, let's take a moment to reflect on your current state of existence. You're cozy at home, perhaps guilt-tripping a half-eaten tub of ice cream while you imagine how much worse life can get, right? But what if I told you that those Roman legionaries had it even worse? Can you fathom standing outside in the freezing cold while someone inspects your toes like it's an art exhibit? Ever thought about how being a soldier meant swapping personal space for personal grievances over corns and calluses? Now, dim the lights, grab a blanket, and settle into your favorite chair. Picture this: a frigid camp filled with legionaries whose sole objective is to survive the winter without losing an extremity. Congratulations! You've just woken up in the 1st century AD, surrounded by men so cozy with each other, the concept of personal space might as well have been out of stock. Here's where our journey begins. Let's talk about a brotherhood forged in the frost. You're nestled in your cozy corner of the barracks, which, if we're being honest, also doubles as a wind tunnel and a slightly less classy barn. Smell that? Oh, it's the delightful blend of wet wool and unwashed bodies, turning into an aroma their ancestors probably wished would be lost to history. Now, take a moment to absorb the scene. Warm-blooded gladiators of Rome huddled together, sharing more than just campfires. These legionaries are sharing an odyssey of shared discomfort. And sometimes that pain manifests in a rather peculiar way. Foot massages. Yes, you heard that right. Just imagine the moment. You're sitting in a circle with what seems like the world's most unfortunate spa day. You look over at your fellow soldier, a burly chap with a beard thick enough to insulate a small house. He's got those early frostbite signs creeping in, turning his toes into what can only be described as tiny, unfortunate sausages. You can't just let him suffer alone. Foot rubs are not only a necessity, they're a brotherly bond of shared solidarity against the wintry void. "Hey, Marcus," you call out, grimacing as you watch one of your comrades examine the frostbitten masterpiece before him. Didn't you think about investing in a pair of actual footwear before stepping into this tundra? He grins sheepishly. What? And miss out on nature's foot massage? As you gingerly take his suffering foot in your hands, become acutely aware of the texture. It's not quite the gentle feel of a soft pillow, but more like unwashed laundry squeezed through a cow's foot bath. There's the silent agreement that you're not only comrades, but basically in the same foolhardy evolution of warmth-seeking life forms. Speaking of warmth, let's not ignore the faint smell wafting off his feet. It's like a haunting blend of cheesy feet and unfulfilled dreams. The tension in the air is palpable, but perhaps the best part of this frozen mortification is watching others try not to laugh. Picture the situation. A group of grown men, soldiers sworn to protect Rome, now reduced to an assembly line of slushy foot care. Have you ever wondered what was going through their minds? Did anyone ever consider that a snowball fight might be less embarrassing than nurturing personal fungi? Every desperate rub and awkward smile is exchanged with a realization.
Camaraderie in the Roman army is built on honor, valor, and occasionally the shared experiences of tow emergencies. Doesn't it make you feel ever so slightly smug knowing your modern-day worries about maintaining a socially acceptable pedicure? Then there's the crucial aspect of verbal motivation. As you knead the frozen foot, you softly chant supportive phrases. "You'll be a toe model yet," or "Frostbite flattens the spirit, but I'm here to elevate it." You begin to question your life choices. Is this what Roman glory feels like, sacrificing dignity in the service of your companion's feet? At last, with an exaggerated sigh of relief and perhaps more laughter than appropriate, you let go of Marcus's numb foot. The deed is done. The frost has been tackled, one awkward foot massage at a time. And you know what? It's moments like this that redefine solidarity. The bond you share may not be glorious, but it certainly beats freezing to the ground, waiting for an inspection, which, let's face it, isn't as nifty as playing thermal foot therapist. And as this charming micro-world unfolds among your fellow legionaries, remember that those winters in the Roman Empire were additional walks in the freezing park, bound together by stubborn toes and warm hearts. Good night, brave soldier. May your dreams be filled with softer socks and brighter tomorrows.
Chapter 17. The Eagle and the Icicles. Hey guys, welcome back to tonight's episode of Historical Horrors Winter Edition, where the weather is less "let's build a snowman" and more "I can't feel my toes." Grab your favorite blanket and let's dive into the frigid depths of history. Tonight, we're exploring something colder than your ex's heart, the harrowing winter experience of a Roman legionary, where the only thing they marched toward was freezing to death. Now, before you settle in, let's ask a few questions that ought to chill your bones even further. Ever wondered how many layers of wool it takes before you resemble a very confused marshmallow? Or how the motto, "No soldier left behind," turns into "No soldier can feel their feet" when frostbite strikes? And let's not forget about the logistical conundrums of winter warfare. How do you lead a charge through snow when your boots feel like they're packed with tiny, angry hedgehogs? So, dim the lights, put on a fan if you feel like embracing that winter chill, and settle in for a ride through the winter wonderland of the 1st century AD. Congratulations, you've just woken up in the winter of 9 AD, where the once mighty Roman army is now teetering between heroic invader and glorified popsicle. Picture it, the Teutoburg Forest, a picturesque scene in a postcard that might read, "Wish you were freezing." The ground is a sundry mess of mud, snow, and the occasional unfortunate corpse, while your attire consists of the heaviest tunic you can find, which smells suspiciously of regret and probably cheese. The only thing in your hand is not a warm cup of cocoa. Oh no, it's a dilapidated shield that's seen better days and maybe a handful of non-existent battle victories. And let's talk about the Eagle Standard, the pride of the Legion, now a ragged flag half buried in the snow like a sad, underwhelming Christmas tree. It's a little more than a mere decoration flapping listlessly in the winter breeze, a desperate attempt to cling to some semblance of glory. One could almost imagine it whispering, "I was supposed to lead men to victory, not become a decorative quilt. Where did it all go wrong?" Ah, but what does it mean to be a Roman legionary during this frosty time? Imagine hauling your body through this foreboding landscape, boots slipping and sliding in the ice,
looking up occasionally to see your comrades grappling with their own struggles, like trying to light a fire with wet wood, while simultaneously wondering if they might just start breeding frostbite as a new lifestyle choice. Maybe you look to your left and see a fellow soldier, Marcus, attempting to build a fire with sticks so soggy they could double as a potent soup ingredient in a dystopian roundup. His hands are fumbling, and he's muttering something exceedingly philosophical along the lines of, "Fire is life. If only I had a lighter or a miracle." You nod in.
Solemn agreement, considering the circumstances. If warmth were candy, you'd be a sugar-starved toddler at a birthday party, desperately searching for those melted remnants behind the sofa. Suddenly, reality sinks in deeper than the snow around your knees. What's that familiar, painful feeling creeping into your toes? Frostbite. Ah, yes, the secret, unscheduled guest at the Winter Olympics of suffering. Forget the medal. It's every man for himself as you slip into an unplanned survival mode. As far as achievements go, signing up for a foot massage from a fellow soldier would give you more joy than finding hidden treasure. Now let's shift gears to the Legion's daily meals, or lack thereof. Picture grouchy soldiers munching on dry rations, convincing themselves that the cold, hard bread was actually a survival strategy designed to toughen them up for victory. You could almost see it. This rock-hard loaf builds character. Sure, it doesn't bring joy or warmth, but it'll make sure we maintain our six-pack abs of ice chips. As night falls, and the temperature dips more dramatically than your last date, the atmosphere becomes eerily quiet, broken only by the low moans of men dreaming of better food and slightly warmer undergarments. You can almost hear the conversation that never happens. You know, if I die out here, at least they'll remember me as the one who had the most chill life choices. Amidst comrades huddled together, there's an unspoken understanding. The rumbles of stomachs are a symphony of sentiment, a bond formed in the crucible of hardship, mostly trying not to lose toes to frostbite. Life in the Legion comes with trials and tribulations no Instagram filter can juice up. As you drift deeper into this absurd frosty saga, remember, every great empire has its dark chapters, and for the Romans in the Teutoburg forest, that chapter was less about glory and more like an ill-fated episode of a survival show gone wrong. After all, when you're halfway through a miserable winter, it's good to realize you're not just another prisoner of snow. You're a part of history, wrapped in layers soaked in sweat and snow, united by a thin layer of a frosty brotherhood. Good night, weary traveler. May you dream of warmer days and non-frozen bread rolls. Remember, if you ever find yourself in the depths of winter, just think, at least you aren't a Roman soldier in the Teutoburg forest. Chapter 18. Frostbite and Flatulent Fowl. Hey guys, welcome back to tonight's episode of Historical Horrors, Winter Edition, where the snow isn't just pretty, it's practically a full-time job involving frostbite and questionable choices. Have you ever wondered what it's like to be a Roman legionary in the dead of winter, surrounded by more cold air than sense? Well, strap in, because tonight we're diving into what it's like to freeze your way through life, one soggy marching boot at a time. But first, let's ponder a few cosmic queries that may just chill you to your very core. How many layers of wool does it take before you become a walking marshmallow with regrets?
What's the preferred flavor of frostbite? Toasty toes or numb upper appendages? And how does one effectively maneuver a sword when your feet have turned into frozen blocks of ice, sort of like popping on skates while attempting a pirouette? So dim the lights, crank that fan to recreate the authentic "I can't feel my face" experience, and get comfy as we slip into the winter of 9 AD, where the only charge a Roman legionary is leading is a stampede to the nearest warming pot. Congratulations! You've just woken up in the Teutoburg forest, where even the trees seem to be shaking in disbelief at your fashion choices. Picture the scene. The trees are as bare as a new recruit on inspection day, standing frozen against the backdrop of a brisk winter sky. A thick, damp chill dances in the air, settling on the ground like an unwelcome party guest who's overstayed their welcome. Only this one really brought the frost, and who could forget the delightful scent of smoldering wet wood mixed with despair? It's not quite a picnic, folks. Instead, it's got that rustic vibe of a winter retreat gone horribly wrong. Let's hone in on our illustrious Roman legionaries, who are, without a doubt, the embodiment of happy-go-lucky whimsy. As they trudge through the snow, envision their heavy tunics swaying awkwardly, their weary limbs wrapped in layers of wool that have seen better days, like that one unfortunate sweater from high school that's still lurking in your closet. One soldier's cloak is so frayed it resembles a patchwork quilt made by a blindfolded raccoon with a flair for the avant-garde. It's not just a cold front outside, it's a fashion disaster waiting to happen. Now, let's not skip the delightful task of setting up camp. You might imagine a cozy huddle of comrades chattering over a crackling fire, but instead, you have a gang of frozen men trying to negotiate wet kindling and damp matches like it's some extreme sport. How about this soggy twig? It looks like it's had a rough life, one suggests, while another ponders if rubbing sticks together can really spark creativity or just frostbite. And speaking of frostbite, the honor of taking the icy plunge falls upon you. Ah, yes, that familiar sensation where your toes
politely start to recede, as if they've suddenly decided that warmth was vastly overrated. Sorry, old friend, but I'm off to the great beyond. Every soldier in the Legion resembles a culinary experiment gone wrong, with toes as cold and lifeless as last week's leftover black pudding. But again, you can hardly complain, because nothing screams valor more than boasting about losing one's toes in battles of wits with freezing weather. And how about the delightful menu of the day? You've gathered your rations. Think hardtack biscuits as tough as your average Amazing Race contestant, some very stale cheese, and if you're lucky, a few frozen vegetables that resemble sad little prisoners awaiting rescue. Ah, fine dining in the wilderness. Who needs a Michelin star when you have a rock-hard biscuit that might double as a doorstop? Imagine munching away on this dehydrated delight while attempting to keep your fingers from separating into icicles. It's culinary survival in its most glorious form. You turn to your left, only to catch sight of Marcus clutching a ladle of, let's be honest, questionable stew. He sniffs it tentatively, a mix of betrayal and faint hope. Today, my friends, We feast, he proclaims dramatically, spooning out a concoction that smells faintly of despair and damp socks. And if we survive the taste test, we might even celebrate with a round of who can still feel their feet. Cue the laughter, which is really just a chorus of chattering teeth. As night begins to fall and the temperature drops faster than your sanity at a family gathering, the camaraderie takes a sharp turn into the wonderful world of frigid claustrophobia. Soldiers huddle together for warmth like desperate marshmallows at a campfire, except the fire is nowhere to be seen, and the only warmth they manage to generate is in the form of flatulent sound effects. Nothing breathes camaraderie like synchronized gassiness while trying not to think about that one regrettable ration from last week. Picture the carousel of frozen faces, where every time you draw breath, it hangs in the air like a little cloud of hope, but then melts away 2 seconds later, leaving you with an overwhelming sense of unfulfilled aspiration. The only thing warmer than your thoughts is the far too close proximity to your sleeping comrades, rolling over and emitting, shall we say, a symphony of bellows. As you settle into your makeshift quarters, remember, there's strength in numbers, but also a lot of chilly despair. Life as a Roman legionary in the relentless Teutoburg forest during winter was anything but a cozy retreat. It was a hilariously tragic endurance test where every moment bordered on the absurd. So keep that in mind as you snuggle up, and know that you are in a comedically bleak yet historically accurate slice of the past, where survival often hung by a thread, and sometimes even an icy string of fate. Good night, brave adventurer. Drift off into dreams of warmer weather and freshly baked bread, and may you never experience the frostbite of Roman winter, unless, of course, you're into that sort of thing. Chapter 19. The Tribune's Tiled Lair of Luxury. Hey guys, welcome back to tonight's episode of Mildly Interesting History for Sleep, where we explore a world colder than your fridge, but way less organized. That's right, tonight we're diving into the surprisingly cozy abode of a Roman tribune. Yes, cozy is the descriptor we'll be using loosely. Ever wondered what it's like to go from a frozen battlefield with about as much comfort as a porcupine convention to the relatively plush digs of a Roman officer? How many pillows does it take to elevate you to noble status? 3? 4? Or do you need to start sacrificing your neighbor's hay for extra fluff? Is there a special ceremony for the first time you step into your warm quarters that involves a musical number performed by your sandals? And what's the protocol if a rat dares to invade your personal space? Spoiler alert, it involves a lot more shouting than you'd expect. So dim those lights, zip up that Snuggie, and let's settle in. Congratulations! You've just woken up in the sun-kissed year of 1 AD, lounging in the tiled quarters of a Roman tribune. The woes of the legionary are but a faint wind outside, as you bask in a surprisingly advantageous pinch of aesthetic discomfort. Picture this: the smooth, cool tiles beneath your feet, glimmering like they were the envy of a modern-day spa. If you're lucky, you might catch the scent of burning wood wafting from the glowing brazier, filling the room with what your modern nose would classify as relaxing. And here's a fun twist. You're pretty sure that sending a lingering whiff of sandalwood to waft through the air isn't just for aesthetic appeal. It's meant to mask the lingering odor of weeks-old sweat and distress from the barracks. Yes, the cozy life of a tribune comes with its benefits and Herculaneum quality fragrances. Let's focus on that table. It's a simple wooden construct, yet it looks suspiciously like it has all the character of a family heirloom, perhaps crafted by a very proud amateur carpenter with an eye for disaster. You can only imagine it telling tales of evenings spent strategizing the next conquest over lukewarm wine, the clattering of armor echoing as soldiers storm in and out, as if they were the high school drama club attempting to stage a performance of Romeo and Juliet, but chaos reigns as always. If you look closely, you'll spot evidence of several late-night feasts gone slightly awry. Half-empty bowls of remains that are getting a little too cozy with the wildlife. Don't worry, that one seems to be reproducing. It's the circle of life, my absinthe-loving Tbilisi. Oh, the wonders of early pest control. Now, let's talk about that brazier heating the room. The flickering flames almost dance in a way that jovially suggests, you might be a powerful tribune, but the warmth from me is the only power you really need. We could all use that reminder when life gets chilly. Just picture a flame casually sassing you to your face while you anxiously sip on wine from a bowl like some ancient Roman caveman. As the sun dips behind the horizon, you may be tempted to snuggle deeper into your tunic, assuming it's not as frayed as a jester's making the joke of the century. For the Romans, layers were essential, and they weren't just styling options, my dear friend. Imagine you're trying to put together a fashion statement with tatters hanging off you like a bad breakup while you clamber to stay warm. An outfit built on optimism and delusion. And speaking of cold, how do you manage entry into society, looking paramount, when the only footwear you own resembles hand-me-downs from a disgruntled goat? Perhaps you'll stroll to the mess hall and promptly realize that your journey serves as a flurry of slips and slides upon the icy threshold, like trying to break dance in a slippery tavern without the alcohol-induced thrills. And for those of you wondering about morning routines, you'll have to wait. Let's face it, morning hygiene back then could make a feral raccoon blush. You have to share water basins with whatever grime your fellow triumphant strugglers left behind. Picture it. The water evaporates quicker than Roman promises during a battle, leaving you splashing away remnants until you resemble an unconventional pouring of muddy goodwill. But when it's nap time, oh, dearest listeners, nothing screams luxury like a bedding arrangement fluffed with hay reminiscent of a well-used pillow at a county fair. You might be slightly in need of the aroma department, but let's call it working with nature. You want comfort? An elite status symbol? Call it poetic justice. This simple bedding was the height of luxury for those entrenched in battle the night before. As the gentle glow from the brazier clings to the walls, however, you can't help but admire the arrangement as cozy yet perilous. After all, no one's ever tried to set the world on fire, literally and figuratively,
without a few singed eyebrows along the way. So, there you are, rejuvenated by warmth, braved by adventure, and humorously off-center. Life isn't just about surviving. It's about embracing the hilarity of it all. So snuggle in, dear time traveler, imagining life on the edge of finesse, a fortified Tribune's little segment of hilariously absurd life. And may your dreams be as brightly lit as the glowing brazier that warms your heart and humor on this fanciful winter evening. Good night and sweet, comfortable dreams. Take that Roman layer of plush warmth with you into slumber,
Chapter 20. Sparking Joy. The Art of Igniting the Improbably Warm. Hey guys, welcome back to tonight's episode of Mildly Interesting History for Sleep, where we're plunging into the depths of a Roman winter. Tonight's adventure is so cold, it might just freeze your expectations, much like the feet of our brave soldiers. That's right, we're talking about the thrilling life-or-death drama of creating warmth in the wilds of ancient Rome. Let's face it, when you're fighting against the elements, you need more than just a solid battle plan. You need a spark of inspiration. Ever tried to light a fire while your fingers are so frozen, it's like trying to start a car with a stick of butter? How many times have you wished a pile of dry leaves and twigs could magically come together and give you a roaring blaze, instead of just a cloud of smoke and a toothy grin from the local raccoon? And what's the etiquette if your comrades are throwing snowballs while you're trying to focus on creating the warmth that so generously eludes you? Spoiler alert, it's definitely not in the handbook of How to Be a Roman Legionary. So dim those lights, grab your blankets, and huddle down into your soothing fortress of cushions. Congratulations! You've just woken up in the freezing winter of 1 AD, somewhere in the wilds of Germania. It's chilly, it's damp, and the only thing standing between you and hypothermia is your trusty flint and steel, and perhaps a slight hope that your battle buddy remembered to bring some dry tinder. Let's set the stage. You're crouched beside a group of fellow legionaries, rugged visages illuminated by the faint embers of yesterday's fire, and you're gripping a flint and steel as if they were the keys to the temple of Jupiter. The air smells like damp earth mixed with the faint odor of desperation as every breath fogs in a puff, a winter greeting that reminds you life is playing a cruel prank. The critical moment is upon you. Will you conjure warmth or simply provide the local wildlife with free entertainment? You can feel the tension hanging in the air, thick as a bear's winter coat. You strike the flint against the steel, sending tiny sparks flying with the enthusiasm of a Roman senator trying to get a vote. This is not just about staying warm. This is Sparta. Okay, wrong civilization, but you get the idea. The first spark hovers in the air like a magical fairy, looking for something to ignite. Fingers crossed, you hold your breath, praying the tinder plays nice. Then, in a moment of exhilarating triumph, or sheer luck, one spark catches the corner of the tinder. It quivers, looks around as if realizing its purpose for existence, and ignites with a small pop, like that first sip of a hot drink after plowing through a snowstorm in a thin tunic. Ah, the sweet scent of smoke rising up with the resolve of a legionnaire about to charge into battle. You fan the flames with the fervor of a talkative barista with a new espresso machine, puffing oxygen into your tiny woodland hearth. The warmth envelops you in an embrace that feels like a warm hug from an overly affectionate bear. Except this bear doesn't want to eat you, at least for now. Let's not overlook the sensation of heat radiating outwards, wrapping around you like an old cozy blanket, filled with questionable stains, but brimming with nostalgic memories. You can almost hear the fiery crackles singing a sweet serenade as your feet start to thaw from their ice-cold slumber. Every twitch of warmth sends sparks of hope right down to your toes, a sensation you've longed for, like a modern-day coffee addict yearning for caffeine after a long night. But hold on, let's not get too comfortable just yet. While you're indulging in this moment of warmth, ever wonder what happens when your fellow legionaries decide control over the flames is their new hobby? Suddenly, it's not just about keeping warm, it's a gladiatorial contest. I'll toss in this piece of wood and you'll see who can hurl the best biodegradable kindling. It's like your high school science fair, only with more mud and fewer blue ribbons. And so, the gamble of the evening proceeds as one of your comrades inadvertently tosses in a slightly damp log that hisses and sputters like an angry cat, evoking laughter and mild panic. Those amateur antics might just earn an invitation from the fire gods for the not-so-great honor of viral means in Eternum, a title your friends will probably use to roast you for centuries to come. Finally, you manage to capture the magic of the moment. Warmth envelops you, and you can't help but reflect on how life, much like this fire, is a complex dance of both skill and chance, punctuated by laughter and, yes, a sprinkle of chaos. Warmth is achieved, the spirit is lifted, and the echoes of joyful camaraderie seem to melt the very frost around you, like thawing ice cream on a summer's day, assuming you don't have a bear trying to steal it. As the flames crackle soft and steady, you settle into this new existence, alive against nature's bite. You may be facing frostbite tomorrow, but tonight, my friend, tonight, you have mastered the art of igniting the improbably warm. So, take this triumphant moment with you into dreamland, where sparks of life weave into the fabric of your imagination, and may your dreams be equal parts comedic and warm, a cozy blanket against the biting chill of Rome's winter. Sleep tight, and remember, if life gives you flint, make some sparks. Good night. Chapter 21. Gathering Snow, a legionary's favorite snack? Hey guys, welcome back to another night of mildly interesting history for sleep, where we're about to dive into something colder than a Roman's sense of humor when his toga gets stuck in the chariot wheels. That's right, tonight we're discussing the thrilling process of gathering snow. Not just any snow, mind you, but pure crystalline flakes that legionaries managed to transform into something marginally more drinkable than the mysterious brown slush often found in their canteens. Now, before you settle in, ask yourself,
Have you ever wondered what it's like to melt frozen snow for hydration in the freezing depths of Germania? Kind of like making a smoothie from ice cubes if the blender were made of iron and there was a U-shaped army boot stomping outside. How do you even decide that today is the day to make snow tea? Or, while huddled around a campfire, is there an unspoken etiquette to who gets the first sip? What happens if they spill it all over themselves? Spoiler alert, probably nothing good, and certainly no social media to document it. So, dim those lights, cozy up under your 12 blankets, and imagine you've just landed, no parachute needed, in 1st century AD Germania. Congratulations! You've woken up in a world where winter isn't just cold. It's an icy conspiracy aimed directly at your morale. The ground is harder than your Aunt Mabel's fruitcake, and you're about to witness the creative genius and absurdity of a bunch of burly legionaries making do with nature's frosty offerings. Now, picture yourself in a towering column of stout soldiers, all bundled up in layers of wool, as if they're auditioning for a winter-themed version of the real Roman army. You see them gathering up the pristine white snow, like a bunch of picky chefs hunting for the last organic avocado at Whole Foods, filling their metal pots. If only they had any idea they could have just ordered some takeout. But alas, in this age, sourcing hydration is more of a noble quest than a jaunt to the local Starbucks. To the casual observer, watching soldiers scavenge the snow might seem a bit silly. After all, what's fun about filling a pot with snow? But you see, it's not just snow. It's the closest these guys are going to get to pristine water until the next warm spring shower. And may I remind you, this isn't the era of bottled H2O or fancy flavored hydration packs. Nope. This is a battle for survival, where boiling snow is akin to modern-day meal prep, except you can't check your Instagram for recipe ideas. As the legionaries gather snow, clad in their sturdy armor that's probably seen more battles than a Roman senator in a debate, they carefully tap their metal pots against the powder. It's as if they're conducting a winter symphony, where the percussion section is all about the delightful crunch of snow that sounds suspiciously like brittle crackers.
The delicate flakes flutter and tumble into the pots, a white curtain drawn closed to shield winter's unkindness. Once the pots are filled, they huddle close to the fire. What an audience! A circle of body heat and hope, covering their soon-to-be warm concoction. It's not just about the ambience, you see. The heat of the fire is necessary for transforming these frozen delights into liquid goodness, and that's when the magic begins. Now, we know that waiting for snow to boil must be riveting, much like watching paint dry, or perhaps your uncle try to assemble IKEA furniture without the instructions. But as the snow melts, something interesting occurs. The soldiers start to chat. Gossip? Nah, more like, if we can just make this liquid edible, we might survive the winter. They casually toss in random bits to impart flavor. some herbs, maybe a stray piece of battle gear, anything but the usual fish guts floating around in their ration bags. Snow soup, anyone? Fresh melted snow, wafting that sweet scent of, well, nothing really. Because let's face it, snow doesn't smell like anything at all, which does serve to build that suspense. One soldier lifts his cup in a ceremonial toast, while everyone else tries to look impressed. "To hydration," he declares, clearly more jolly than the interior of his armor. You can almost hear the collective thought, "Better than nothing, I suppose." Is it just me, or does the group's morale fluctuate more than a newly elected consul's approval ratings? Of course, the water boils, and for them, it's as if they've just seen the Holy Grail in the most mundane form possible. As they each take a sip, one soldier accidentally lets out a loud "ah" that echoes through the trees. It's not a tribute to the gods, but rather the realization that hot water doesn't immediately freeze on contact with their clammy lips. He misses the look of pure derision his buddies shoot him, because, let's be real, when you're sharing a moment of triumph over melted snow, ego takes a back seat to survival. And while some enjoy their snowy brew with all the dignified grace of a careful diplomat sipping fine wine at a feast, others seem more akin to puppies splashing on a frozen pond, overexcited and completely unaware of the consequences of their own actions. Suddenly, someone sneezes, and half the group erupts into laughter, like a bunch of frat boys at a party trying to impress future citizens of Rome. Meanwhile, that fine drink erupts like a geyser. Congratulations, you've just made snow soup a spectator sport. The icy brew warms them enough to fuel some long overdue reflections on, why did I sign up for this life? For many legionaries, gathering snow is just another day in the brutal life of a soldier during winter. In some ways, it's a culinary adventure, albeit one with frostbite potential. Isn't that the beauty of living in ancient times? Who needs Michelin stars when you have a plethora of crunchy white flakes? So there you have it. Soldiers, boiling snow, clashing pots, and questionable hydration practices, more difficult than assembling furniture from the store with no instruction manual. As you close your eyes, let this image settle in your dreams. Because if you think today's cooking methods are absurd, just wait until ancient Rome tries to navigate winter's icy grip. Sleep well, dream of snow that becomes warm soup, and remember, life isn't about how hot your water is, it's about who you share it with, even if that's a bunch of awkwardly laughing legionaries. Good night.
Chapter 22. Maintaining Peace and Sharp Blades. The Tent Life of a Legionary.
Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Mildly Interesting History for Sleep, where tonight we're diving deep into the sultry world of a very cramped Roman tent in winter. Picture this. Two focused legionaries diligently cleaning, inspecting, and oiling their gladius swords and pilum spears in smoky, damp conditions. It's not exactly the setting for a culinary masterpiece, but it's certainly a tutorial on how to maintain your weapons while trying not to inhale too much of the campfire's dubious charm.
Sifting through the history of weapon maintenance might sound less exciting than binge-watching that new series your friend recommended, but let me assure you, it's positively thrilling. If you've ever wondered how to look like a hero while covered in soot and sweat, you've come to the right place. So, before we dig into the lively chaos of sharpening blades in a tent, give yourself a moment to ponder. Have you ever tried to keep your bathroom clean while your cat is enthusiastically digging up every piece of fluff? Or consider, how do you choose which sword to polish first when all of them seem equally deserving of attention? There's always that one sword, lurking in the corner like an underappreciated sibling, just waiting for its moment to shine. Now, let's imagine you've just woken up in 1st century AD Germania, where today's top entertainment involves making your gladius shine brighter than Augustus Caesar's golden statue. Congratulations! Your tent is now a designated spa, of sorts, for the famed Roman weaponry. As you enter this smoky abode, your senses are overwhelmed by a medley of smells: charred wood, slightly burnt meat, and a generous dash of human sweat that would make even the toughest cologne forfeit in surrender. You can nearly taste the tension as two legionaries, Marcus and Lucius, are engaged in an intense game of who can spit-shine their gladius harder than their buddy. Trust me, it's like a customer service escalation, but with more stabbing implements and fewer customer satisfaction surveys. Marcus is hunched over a hefty sword, expertly polishing the blade until it gleams like the northern stars. Meanwhile, Lucius, clearly embracing his inner philosopher, is all about the moderate approach. In his mind, the less he cares about the glint factor, the more swagger he'll exude when facing the enemy. You know, he muses, the dirt really adds character. I bet the Gauls will be more intimidated if they think I've been in more skirmishes. Yeah, good luck with that logic, buddy. It's like showing up to a job interview wearing pajama pants and claiming it's an avant-garde fashion statement. Whirring blades and wild thoughts aside, let's talk maintenance. A Roman legionary knew that a gladius, or pilum, was more than just a fancy tool for poking things. Your weapon was your lifelong companion, kind of like that tattered old blanket you can't bear to throw away, even though it's more holes than fabric. These legionaries were engaged in a routine that would have made any modern self-help guru proud, full of mindfulness and reflection, if they were into that sort of thing, which they probably weren't, while elbow-deep in grime. Now, as Marcus rubs oil onto his sword, you can't help but imagine that this type of grooming ritual might come with some lofty expectations like, "Hey Lucius, did you sign up for the Great Blade Off this weekend?" Picture warriors lining up, swords in the air, all sponsored by spiffy logos and promises of victory seasonings that somehow flavor every engagement. Yes, nothing draws the audience in like the clanking of blades amid an atmosphere that smells suspiciously of unwashed soldiers and ancient drama. The competition isn't just for the best weapon maintenance, but who can manage to slip more puns about their blades without bursting into laughter. Meanwhile, the tent's air is thick with smoke, and Lucius wants none of it. He opens the tent flap, not realizing his trusty shield is now a makeshift doorstop, ready to launch into battle if the wind picks up. "It's a drafty nightmare in here," he mutters, eyes squinting against the haze. "Has the Eternal City trained us to be warriors or full-time mules?" It's safe to say, unless you've experienced the delightful joy of maneuvering an oily blade while negotiating for space and air,
you can't really grasp the home-like ambience of this battleground. Think of it as being stuck in an elevator with random strangers. Everyone's got their goal, no one has enough space, and the old man at the back won't stop talking about how, in his day, the going pressure cooks were much tougher than today's versions. Once the gladii are gleaming and ready, there's a moment of triumphant silence. Well, until a nearby legionary's sneeze breaks the concentration, making Lucius jump and nearly plunge his freshly polished sword into his own foot. Ah, yes, the risk of friendly fire is always high when engaged with weapons and comrades alike. Imagine that. You finally understand the meaning of the phrase, death by overzealous cleaning. As the day draws on, the smell of the fresh bond between man and sword permeates the tent. Legions of past soldiers whisper sweet nothings about tempering and honing, while some more daring soldiers crack jests that would make even a statue chuckle. Do you think at least one of us will win Roman Man of the Year for the best weapon? One quips, while stroking his freshly primed pilum. Finally, as you settle in for the night, snuggled under your imaginary army cloak, visualize the scene. Swords gleaming, camaraderie blooming amid clouds of smoke, and friendly competition sizzling in the air. You drift off knowing that even amidst the chaos, these legionaries remind us that life is best served with
A pinch of humor, a heap of stubbornness,
and the odd whiff of sword oil. Sleep tight, dream of battles fought and blades polished, and remember, if cleaning your sword feels like a chore, just give it a twist of absurdity. It might just make you the hero of your own epic tale. Chapter 23. Emerging from Hibernation. Legionaries in Spring. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of mildly interesting History for Sleep, where tonight's voyage takes us from the suffocating embrace of a Roman tent in winter to the sweet relief of a warming spring day. Ah yes, the kind of warmth that is more inviting than your favorite blanket burrito, and infinitely preferable to the inevitable frostbite that came from trying to convince stubborn leather sandals that they really should provide warmth. Tonight, we're diving into the glorious moment when legionaries emerge from the deep freeze of winter and, similar to a bunch of grumpy bears startled by the first warm rays of sun, shake off the frost and make a triumphant return to human activity. But let's get real. Would you want to unearth your dignity after 3 months of wearing the same itchy wool socks and complaining about everything? Trust me, the smell of 5,000 sweaty feet is not the kind of fresh spring air you envision when you hear the words Roman victory. Before we dive in, remember to like, subscribe, and comment, but only if you actually enjoy this delightful, mildly absurd dive into historical hilarity. And let's be real, who wouldn't relish the idea of laughing while sleeping through ancient battle strategies? So, kick back, dim those lights, and lower the volume on that distant anxiety of yours. You might have a million things to worry about in modern life,
like whether to fold your laundry or buy more cat toys. But tonight, let's trade those concerns for a sprinkle of historical absurdity. Who knew that a legionary's biggest dilemma in spring would be how to avoid being mistaken for a woolly mammoth on the march to victory? As the blooming season approaches, ask yourself, have you ever tried to shimmy out of layers as if they're certified clammy superhero suits? Or perhaps stumbled out of bed in the morning feeling like a test subject for a particularly unflattering constrictor? Ah, the delightful irony. Once the heat cranks up, those winter cloaks, while glorious in their protective heaviness, transform into near medieval tortures, akin to trying to squeeze into the pants you swore you'd fit again someday. Congratulations! You've just woken up in 1st century AD Germania, where the sun is rising, birds are chirping, and the earth is awakening after an arduous winter. The soldierly aroma of sweat and stale dreams swirl in the air like a bad cologne you wouldn't dare wear on a date. As you rub the sleep from your eyes, you find yourself among legionaries prepping for another exhilarating day. Yes, exhilarating in the way watching paint dry is exhilarating. But those first warm rays hold a promise of better days. Kind of like those famous "the weekend is coming" vibes, if the weekend involved a pack of hungry barbarians and limited rations. The camp is an orchestra of sounds. The crisp rustling of new tunics, the clanging of metal,
as shields and spears are polished, and best of all, the cacophony of bodies shedding winter layers as if they were molting snakes. Legionaries are emerging from their tents, eyes squinting as they venture out into the sun like vampires confronted with the world's worst disco ball. Abandoning the comforting weight of those heavy cloaks feels like the first step of a new diet. Goodbye, meatloaf. Hello, salads. Except in this case, it's more goodbye, woolen sweaters. Hello. Oh no, is that another soldier's foot? Let's talk about attire. Imagine now, as these proud soldiers peel off their cloaks, the ensuing sight might be likened to a malevolent Pepto-Bismol factory explosion. There they stand, various shades of pale, all with the uneven tan lines of men who spent too much time in damp tents and too little basking in a sunny disposition. Spoiler alert, realizing that 95% of your fellow soldiers look like a collection of poorly mummified remains is not exactly the boost of confidence you need before any skirmish. Let's face it, when your battle cry sounds more like a startled cat, you might want to consider practicing those witticisms about the superiority of your drinking habits instead. As the day continues, the soldiers dive headfirst into their daily regimen, all while trying to escalate awkwardness to laughable levels. Every legionary knows that re-establishing oneself in the ranks is as challenging as finding a comfortable couch seat during a family gathering, surrounded by a crowd but still feeling just a tad out of place. And so they stride around camp, humorously flexing their muscles in front of others in a sort of dueling compendium to see who can look the most dashing while balancing a sword in one hand and rations in the other.
Some soldiers, desperate for camaraderie, toss out the occasional pun about their newly liberated armpits, leading to eruptions of laughter that echo more than their battle cries. Does anyone else feel like our armpits went through a stage of hibernation just like we did? One soldier quips, clutching his greaves and fanning himself dramatically. Next time, I'm enforcing a use it or lose it policy. But amidst the jokes and jests, the soldiers prepare their gladii and pilums, filled with the kind of determination usually reserved for pre-holiday shopping sprees. In the spirit of throwing off winter's solemnity, there's something electric in the air, like those early spring days when everything seems possible, including a surprise snowstorm that turns your day from glorious sunshine to damp misery in seconds flat. With camaraderie on the rise and laughter bridging gaps previously filled with winter chill, life at the camp blossoms, much like the wildflowers daring to peek through the soil. You close your eyes for a moment, the scent of metal and sweat mingling with the vibrant hints of approaching warmth. You might drift off to dreams of far-off realms and
Glorious battles, waking up in a springtime world brimming with shenanigans and a scent that, well, at least smells better than that tent from winter. So as the day wanes, remember the victory that awaits when the last cloak sheds and the weight of winter decorum transforms into bursts of laughter and unexpected friendship amidst the chaos of a Roman camp. And perhaps, just perhaps, that's a lesson we can carry into our own lives. After all, if you can't laugh about your hibernation antics, what's the point? So sleep tight, envisioning the legionaries' escapades, and know that every ending must come with a laugh, and maybe an explosive display of frozen diets.
Chapter 24. A Prayer for Survival. The Serious Business of Legionary Life. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of mildly interesting history for sleep. Tonight, we're trading the rusty chill of the Roman winter for a moment of solemn reflection. And right now, we're about to dive headfirst into the nearly shimmering world of prayer, sweat, and, dare I say, intense awkwardness brought to you by our intrepid Roman soldiers. As we step into the flickering light of a makeshift shrine, let's be real. We're in the presence of a legionary who's probably praying harder than you did before that big school exam back in the day, when the only thing heavier than your textbooks was your anxiety. Will there even be a safe return from the battlefield? Or will he end up on a missing, extremely average soldier poster? But before we delve deeper into this sacred and slightly humorous moment, if you're enjoying this journey through mildly absurd historical hilarity, don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment. But only if you actually enjoy this. Remember, the last thing we need is for you to comment, "How dare you interpret history with humor?" while rolling your eyes into the back of your head. Now, dim those lights, cozy up in your blankets, and get comfortable. Tomorrow's concerns can wait, like that ever-mysterious sock that never comes out of the dryer. Have you ever found yourself kneeling somewhere, perhaps in front of your fridge, contemplating the last slice of pizza and sending prayers to the pizza gods for it to be untouched? Or maybe you've stood in line at the DMV, wishing hard for patience, or, at the very least, a faster-moving line. Congratulations! You've just woken up in 1st century AD Germania,
where the frost clings to the ground like an overzealous, clingy ex, and the sun, if it appears, will only be a tease. You rise from your spot in the Roman encampment, rubbing the sleep from your eyes, surrounded by fellow legionaries, each lost in their thoughts about the upcoming campaign season. Before you is a makeshift shrine, more impressive in its earnestness than its aesthetics. Imagine a collection of rocks stacked together awkwardly, joining forces with sticks, like a failed Pinterest project that could have used a little bit of finesse. And there, kneeling beside it, is your friendly neighborhood legionary, bowing his head with solemn determination, clutching a spear in one hand and muttering fervently like a man who just realized he forgot to set his Sunday roast on time. The air is thick with an assortment of fragrances. A lovely bouquet featuring hints of damp wool, seasoned sweat, and an unseasonably powerful whiff of soggy leather. Not exactly the aromatic bliss you'd want your 3-week vacation scented by. You squint at the sight. There he is, a steadfast soldier who's raised the bar on prayer, knee-deep in serious contemplation, probably offering his heartfelt hopes for
survival, and possibly a well-aimed wish for a pair of winter socks that don't itch like they've been sewn together using goat bristles. Excellent priorities, my friend. Let's talk about the stakes here. Winter's been more brutal than your cousin Larry at a game of Monopoly, leaving soldiers feeling like they spent way too much time trying to keep warm by snuggling with their chariots, then forgetting to actually move them. The prospect of battle looms like the specter of awkward family reunions. So what do you pray for? A warm meal? A solid supply of wine? Or the sheer gratitude of coming back not just for the glory, but to experience the joy of fresh bread and a fully intact body? As the icy breath of Germania crops up around the camp, this lone soldier offers his sincere plea for survival, for safe passage through the coming chaos. You can't help but wonder, does he ever feel like an underdog film character, hoping to win over the audience with his resolve to rise above the odds? Perhaps a little montage will spring to life any moment now, complete with an inspiring soundtrack and a close-up of him marching determinedly, casting a glance back at his comrades like, whatever happens out there, at least no one can mock my prayer posture. But oh, let's not forget the small comedic details. Can you imagine, amidst such solemn moments, if someone sneezes? Picture it, the wholly intense vibe shattering like glass, that primal sound echoing through the chill air as the legionary's pet prayer gets tossed out like a bad piece of bread. Blessed gods, please don't let me catch a cold before I'm skewered in battle. Or, please let me come home to something other than the cold, judgmental glare of my mother for being unspectacular once again. And then, in the silence that follows, the other soldiers participate in a casual competition of who can avoid eye contact without bursting into laughter. It's the kind of moment where victory doesn't wear a crown. It wears the awkwardness that only a mix of somber devotion and impending doom can bring. As a gentle warmth begins to dissipate the cold grip of winter, you feel compelled to add your own prayers to this absurd mix. Please, O gods of ancient Rome, let my laundry always be magically folded every time I come home to a mountain of it. Thoughts begin to run wild. And please grant that I never have to deal with another peasant's questionable cooking experiments. As you bask in the delightful absurdity of it all, you can't help but chuckle, for even in the face of battle, humanity thrives when it finds mirth in the most unexpected places. And perhaps that's the true call of survival. Finding laughter among the frost and fear, the joy of camaraderie over a simple prayer that draws all soldiers together before a shivering winter dawn breaks, setting the stage for the absurdity of life, whether it's in battle or the eternal question of weather. Lunch should be a sandwiches or leftovers. Let yourself drift off, bathed in the camaraderie of fellow soldiers, clutching their swords, praying for warmth, survival, and perhaps the absurd realization that laughter is the best weapon of all. So close your eyes, wrap those thoughts in happy absurdity, and let the story continue rolling along into the next intriguing slice of life, as every legionary steps forth into a world not only of warriors, but of whispers, prayers, and delightful unpredictability. Sleep well, dear soldiers of the night. Chapter 25. The Face of Endurance. Winter's Decree on a Roman Legionary. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Mildly Interesting History for Sleep. Tonight, we're trading in warm nights by the fireplace for something colder than last week's leftover pizza. The bone-chilling existence of a Roman legionary battling the relentless winters of Germania. You know, that place famous for its dreary weather and relentless dirtiness, like that pair of socks you forgot was in the gym bag for 2 weeks. Now, before we launch ourselves into a history lesson so hypnotically dull that even a history teacher might fall asleep, remember to like, subscribe, and comment. Only if you actually like what you hear, of course. After all, the last thing we need is someone earnestly proclaiming, "How dare you mock the grave struggles of ancient Rome," while knitting their eyebrows together in judgment. So, dim those lights, wrap yourself in a blanket thicker than Roman armor, and take a deep breath as I pose you some questions. Have you ever wondered what it feels like to wake up in a puddle of cold sweat because your heater decided it was the perfect night to take a vacation? Or how about waking up in a tent where every breath feels like an icicle forming in your chest, waiting to stab your heart out? Would you survive long enough to complain about the lack of gluten-free options at the breakfast table? Congratulations, you've just woken up in 1st century AD Germania, where the frost clings to you like an unexpected hug from that weird uncle who always shows up to family functions. In front of you stands an aging Roman legionary, whose face is more weathered than a loaf of bread left out on the counter for a month. His skin, like ancient parchment, tells tales of countless northern winters, a living reminder of Rome's unyielding resilience. Imagine this, a heavy brow furrowed in thought, a jawline chiseled as if by a particularly enthusiastic sculptor who only worked from the neck up, and eyes that have seen so much action they could write their own biography. From shields to soggy socks, my misadventures in freezing weather. As he trudges through the snow, the chill in the air is more aggressive than an unexpected group project during your final year of college. Each step is a mini battle against the frostbite nipping at his exposed skin. You can practically hear his joints creaking like an old door shut by a mischievous ghost. Couldn't they have invented a little more comfort in boots? He probably muses, wishing for something other than Roman sandals, the kind that give you toe frostbite and writer's cramp from the countless blisters produced. You can almost smell the mix of damp wool and sweat
wafting through the frozen bliss of early morning, which could best be described as a delightful bouquet that reminds you of a damp dog's fur. And let's not forget the perfume of roasted turnips lingering in the air.
Camp. Because nothing says Merry Christmas quite like a bowl of slightly rotten vegetables in sub-zero temperatures. That's right. I hope your dinner tonight was better than a legionary's breakfast. Ah, the supplies. This legionary carries not just equipment, but also the burden of a heavy, beautiful cloak, his last shred of dignity against winter's mighty breath. It's as if he wrapped himself in a gory patchwork of animal skins that smells like, we didn't get to wash this again before the frost came. Which makes you think, wouldn't it be nice to barter it for a nice warm sweater from a friendly villager? Excuse me, sir, could I trade you a spear for one of those soft, sheep-infested sweaters? To truly grasp the absurdity of their plight, you must picture meals consisting of cold rations that would make a modern-day school lunch look gourmet. Hardtack, essentially a brick of flour meant to be chewed on till your teeth regretted every decision, is the delicious bread of choice. And picture this. You may fork over a prized sword for a single clean bowl of soup. One bowl to behold them all. Except, if you're not careful, you might find a suspiciously large chunk of, is that meat? Or, gulp, a root vegetable that decided it would hold a personal vendetta against your stomach. But let's not get too serious here. Imagine a gathering of soldiers trying to keep spirits up around a campfire filled with winter's unforgiving chill, tossing jokes around like hot potatoes. Except, instead of potatoes, it's more, why did the Germanic tribes cross the Rhine? To freeze their tails off on the other side. Ah, comedy. The revered art form that fills the void left by actual warmth. Yet, even with frostbitten toes and an unending yearning for a hot tub, winter's embrace has its perks. It cultivates a certain camaraderie, soldiers snuggling up for warmth closer than college roommates during finals week. Those are bonds formed in the crucible of bleak conditions and a shared desire for a simple slice of warm bread instead of a hard biscuit that feels more like convincing your mouth to chew a piece of wood, flavored by desperation. Finally, let's talk about the ultimate irony. After all that struggle and sacrifice, after surviving the northern winter and its diabolical chill, what's waiting on the other side of this dramatic adventure? An honor parade? A medal? Nope. It's the inevitable return to Roman civilization, where you'll be forced to listen to younger recruits complain about how hard their lives are, while you, the aging legionary, are stuck thinking about how they've never had to navigate a snow-covered forest without proper socks. So, as our soldier trudges bravely through the snow, his face a portrait of endurance, keep this in mind. Surviving winter isn't just about battling the elements. It's about finding laughter, friendship, and even a bit of beauty in the chaos of life. Sleep soundly, my dear listener, knowing that even amidst the struggle of ancient winters, the human spirit endures, and it fumbles and stumbles its way through history with a smile, a cheeky grin, and perhaps a prayer that it will all somehow make a hilarious story someday. And now, as the snow settles, as the wind softens its long icy howl, and as the last embers of the Roman winter camp glow faintly in the dark, let your breath slow, and let the weight of the ancient world lift gently from your shoulders. Tonight, we walked beside men who carried more than shields and spears. We walked beside men who carried burdens, cold, hunger, exhaustion, fear, and the heavy silence of lands that felt like the edge of the world. We watched a centurion stand alone against a winter that seemed determined to swallow him whole, holding the line not out of comfort, not out of glory, but out of duty. We felt the sting of freezing wind against exposed skin. We heard the coughs of soldiers huddled around weak fires, warming their hands over flames that barely fought back the cold. We saw tents sagging under snow, boots stiff with frost, and breath turning to white clouds that vanished before they even rose. And yet, in all that hardship, there was resilience, a quiet, stubborn strength, the kind that has carried humans through every brutal winter of every age. A strength built not from pride, but from endurance, from refusing to yield even when the world felt frozen and indifferent. So now, as you lie in your warm bed, wrapped in softness instead of wool, surrounded by comfort instead of hostile wind, take a moment to feel grateful for heat, for shelter, for the gentle quiet of a night that asks nothing of you. Let the cold of ancient Gaul fade into memory. Let the fire of the past dim into soft, peaceful darkness. Let your body loosen, like snow melting under morning sun. You're safe. You've done enough. The world, with all its battles, ancient and modern, can wait until tomorrow. Close your eyes, breathe deeply, and drift softly into sleep.